Okay, it has been a moment. I've already created a VFX plate for it. If you guys want to watch a tutorial on how to make proper ASUS CG VFX plates, I have a tutorial for that already. It's on the YouTube channel, so go ahead and first hit the subscribe button if you guys aren't already. We are almost at 2,000 subscribers, which is crazy, crazy, crazy. Share it with your friends if you guys have any friends that want to learn visual effects. Let's go and delete everything and then create a whole new window here inside of Blender for VFX, and then we'll do motion tracking. Hit open for the video, and let's go find our stream. Great. If we go to the beginning here, this is how you use the camera tracker node inside of Blender. I don't know why this is open over here, but what we're going to do is we're going to hit window, new window, place this over here. Let's just make sure that we are selected on our plate ref now. I'm going to start out with minimum amount of camera track markers here, if we can. Control click over here. We're not going to use detect features because I don't have time to like, now that I've wasted enough time on other things, I don't actually have time to validate my checking. I now have to basically just do one at a time. I actually think one at a time is probably a way better idea. It's better to have 8 good tracks than like 1,000 bad tracks. It's okay if not all your tracks go all the way to the end, at least in my opinion, because I feel like as long as you're consistent with when they go off and they're not erroring off, then I think, as in like dragging across the screen is what I mean by erroring. I think we're going to go to the end of the shot. I want to get some here. I think ideally you want as many of them to go to the end of the shot as possible. We're getting there. We're just tracking rocks right now, guys. I don't like tracking trees as much just because they do move. And you think they're not, but then they do. Okay, let's take this whole thing. Let's go over here to, well, here's our timeline. And then I have my camera track on. There's the camera solver. If I rotate this, okay, that's perfect. Now let's go to 3D cursor. It's fine. We'll just manually orient this guy. As long as this is kind of, I feel like the tracking markers are still screwed up because I know this height is off now. And let's set this to 3D viewport. And for our background image now, let's go ahead and set the opacity all the way up. I'm going to say, great. I think that's fine for me as far as the tracking is concerned. It's pretty dang close. Next up, let's start doing some of the layout aspects of this. Let's go over here to layout and let's start building out our scene that we have. I'm going to scale this on the median origin here. I'll probably do that. All right, and we're going to try to see if this really lines up at all with our environment. Because like for the most part, this back wall here, I mean, it's all natural. So like we're just going to try to like block out what the terrain is kind of like here. So just grab that over here. And then this back wall is actually, oh, we're going to have to edge loop it. Yeah, that's good. And then let's go back into here, edge loop that. We're just creating kind of like a rough idea of where this wall is. This will help us later to adjust our camera track as well if there's any adjustments we need to make. I'll probably actually do, just so I could put it in, FFmpeg doesn't work inside of Nuke. So let's just swap this over to something like JPEG and copy that. What is the effect, guys, where it generates the, like as a wireframe? It's called wireframe. Who knew that it was called wireframe? This will be a little bit thicker for us to be able to view, but now if we go back over here, and then do viewport render animation, it'll make it a little bit easier to see. Okay, guys, that's a pretty good track if I ever saw one. Let's do Rock Quarry Military Outpost. This is a little different than I was planning on doing it before. Ooh, some stairs. I like the stairs. What if there's like stairs on the back wall here? I have to get some roto done of these guys, I think. Nice thing about having the ground kind of like create it now. I might even recommend, let's see, let's put that in wireframe. If we just go in here and then just align this more with where the back wall actually is, this will make things a little bit easier to like just point and click. I like to just add the cursor to like where I want something to be. Great. Okay, so now we just have like our floor there, and then let's start getting some stuff organized. So that's just ground. I'm just going to call this ref actually for right now. And then if we go into here, let's display that. We're going to turn off the render view for this because we're not actually going to want that. next up, actually, I think we'll have to worry about all the render preset settings next week, but there's a few things that it added inside of here. In fact, maybe let's just go do it now because I just already know it's going to be a pill. It added all this stuff in here. I'm just probably going to deselect use nodes because I never like using nodes anyways for rendering stuff. We're going to be using nodes inside of Nuke, so why would I want to composite it inside of Blender? But from here, we can go in and we can start roughing out some stuff inside of our scene. I think actually let's set the scale first. This might actually be probably the best thing to do. Let's go back to the start of the shot. Let's see, who is this guy? I don't know who you are, dude, but we're gonna guess how tall you are right now. How tall do you guys think this guy is? 1.79 meters? It's probably pretty close. I was gonna say 1.89 meters, like 6 foot. Although he is a little crouched. 1.79 meters. Now, if we scale everything in the entire thing to this height here, this will allow us to create our scale. I like to do this just because it makes everything way easier to set. So we already have kind of like this line here, and all I have to do is set this to scale on the 3D cursor here, the transform, and find that height to be about the same height as this dude here. And roughly, we're going to be in the ballpark. I mean, we don't really know how tall this dude is. Probably, if you guys are a VFX soup on set, or if you guys want to ask your client for information, I would say on a shot, be like, hey, how tall is this person? Or, you know, get measurements yourself. And then write that down. And then that way, when you guys track stuff later, you can then apply your correct scaling of everything. I think roughly this is probably correct. So setting our 3D cursor over there, if we add in a cube, and our cube is supposed to be, I think this is 2 meters tall, right? Then now it's going to be the correct size. 0.5, and then grab Z, 0.5, and there we go. This is going to be a 1 meter tall cube. It's actually a pretty big cube. I think I just looked up how tall a stair was. Because I was like, how tall is a stair? Because if we know the exact height of a stair, you could just extrude it and say it's like 0.0254 is what it's saying. Oh my god, that's small. There's no way that's a stair height. No, that's not correct. I was like, there's no way, dude. Wow. I was like, nah. All right, now we kind of roughly know that our stairs, that looks like a correct stair size there. So now we just set up an array. We'll set that to like a -1. And then we'll set the Z here to a +1. And now all we have to do is just increment our stairs upwards. And we'll have stairs kind of going up the side of this cliff face here. Another fun thing we can do while we're getting into this layout phase, if we really want to know like where our character is supposed to be at and stuff like that, we can actually do roto of these characters. So let's do that actually right now. And open up DaVinci Resolve. And then we'll import our plate into it. And all we're going to do is create a magic mask roto of the characters and use that to import inside of Blender. Inside of Blender, you can actually have multiple video backdrops. So we have this one video backdrop here, but we can actually do a foreground video backdrop. This one is set to background. So let's say it, with our camera selected, you can actually see that it says back for depth. If we set it to front, it'll be in front of everything. And actually, we could probably even do this and just set transparency if you want to be lazy. In our particular instance, we're going to want this to be back because I like to have things at full, you know, strength of when we see them. I don't like to have the opacity. Otherwise, it makes it kind of hard to gauge like what you're really seeing and what's, you know, where and all that stuff. So we're just first set this to 2048 by 1080. I think that's all good. It'll automatically change our frames per second and all that jazz. No, that's my werewolf stuff. And I'm probably going to import the plate. Import that in. Now it's going to import it and it's going to look weird, and that's because we need to set our color management settings. So let's do ACES CC input transform. We know this is our ACES CG material. Let's go to the color tab here and let's zoom in now under the magic mask tool. We're just going to select our guy. It's probably not going to do a good job, by the way. It doesn't, generally speaking, do great jobs when the people are so far away. Believe me, I've been doing a lot of cowboys recently on horseback, and they're like super far away from the camera because it's a drone shot, and it just does not work. We'll go ahead and select that over there, and then if we select this, we can see what it's doing. And obviously, that is not correct. But if we select better, it might do a slightly better job. And we just have to deselect the stuff around him. Overall, it kind of works, I'm not going to lie. It kind of works. The only other thing I might want to do is actually do this guy as well. I was going to do him as a separate layer, but I think it'll be best just to do them at the same time. It's pretty rough. Like this immediately gets rough. But all we have to do is just say minus. Whoopsies. I might just delete that last one. Yeah, it kind of just, it's very rough. Let's do iterations, max that out. Let's do consistency, max that out. Let's clean the black area a bit. Let's do in and out ratio. I'm just going to clean that up. And that's going to get it pretty close for us. So we'll now take that and we'll render this out. So going to our delivery tab, I'm going to select JPEG as our output. And under our file format, let's just make sure that we're setting it to 4 and starting at frame 1000. And if we go over to our video option, going to then place this inside of our live stream folder. Next up, we're going to import that mat into our, this is a mess, but we're going to just import that into our Nuke comp. And let's see, we're going to make sure that it's using the red channel. And now if we go view that, you can see we have our dudes. And they may not be perfect, but it's the thought that counts, right? Is that what they say? Yeah, I think so. Let's go ahead and render this out. And we're going to use this exact same right node that we used before. Yes, we're going to use the exact same one we used before. But this time, we're going to call this plate 3. Or, 3. And then let's do reformat. And we're going to make this half resolution, so scale that to 0.5. And then instead of JPEGs, we're going to save this out as a PNG. And then inside of our PNG, set that to RGBA. And currently there is no alpha on this lovely thing. Just to make sure auto alpha is selected. And so now when you render this out, it'll actually render out with the alpha correctly. So let's go ahead and do that. And then inside of our Blender now, go back over here. We're probably going to want to re-output those JPEGs, by the way, because those were full res, and that's going to slow down our playback speed, and you don't want that on this kind of stuff. So let's actually do that real quick, because we're going to want to do this in order. So back over here, we have this plate ref. I'm going to also just copy this reformat to it, and this plate ref, we'll just call it plate ref 4. Render that out. We're using the exact same reformat as before, so it should be half resolution of 2K. And so now, if we go ahead and remove that, hit add image, we're going to open up a new image, go to our streams, ref folder. We're going to load in plate ref 4, which I should have actually just rendered it to a separate folder, but I didn't. Sorry guys, my bad. This is a little disorganized. There we go, hit open image, and that's going to import plate ref 4. And you'll notice that's going to play back at full speed, which actually is, I think, what happened there? Because that actually started to play back incorrectly. I'm wondering if this is actually, I don't know. I do know this is correct though. So let's just keep that for right now. Oh, 50%, is that possible? Okay, let's dive into this a little bit more. I'm gonna hit add image. Let's grab our plate over here. I'm going to actually render this to a whole different folder. And then let's go grab that. Let's do 1000 to 1095. Hit open image. There we go. That should be correct. Oh, that's also interesting. That's why. I think I found out why. It was 1 frame off. Also, why do I have to keep doing it this way? It's so crazy. Select 1000 to 1095. Hit open image. And then, let's see. If we go back to frame 0, this should have that. Why is that not playing back at the same freaking... Okay, I think we lost about 12 frames. I don't know how we lost 12 frames, and I don't know why. But there's no distortion between the two of them, but we figured it out. There's 12 frame difference between what's in Blender and what's not in Blender, and why. So this here is playing back this footage here. Let's see, offset X, Y. This happened because of what, I don't understand why it happened, but it is because of the camera solver. So let's figure out why the camera solver is off by that many frames. As far as my other plate goes, I can definitely get it to line up. I just need to re-render it. So we'll just do that. I just imported it and then set the end to 83. So now all I have to do is hit add, open. Let's go up 1, ref, and 4. And we'll set you to 0. That would explain why the tracking was just so far off, guys. What was that all about? Well, now we know. So now we go back up 1, ref, 3, select our guy, open, and we'll set this to front now. And if we set the opacity all the way up, Alt H this, we will now have our guys kind of like running here in our scene. Now we've got our guys. Now again, this is just for reference. We're not actually compositing or anything like this, but this allows us to see where like kind of like our guy is running and all that stuff as we're building out this kind of like 3D layout of what everything will look like. Now, we're going to want our tank that we were talking about to probably be about right there. And so let's go ahead and add a cube in. Just scale it up. Right? We think it there for the tank, guys. Like they're running towards the tank. Now we're just kind of like building out this environment, guys. Like with any set extension, there's going to be a lot of like research for like where you guys are going to want your stuff to be. Like I would recommend like opening up some different images and whatnot. Like I like this. I think a lot of the stuff in here looks pretty cool. The cool thing about like doing, let's see, let's do a circle. Let's do like a circle. Let's scale that up. Some of this foreground stuff, we can actually get like our own designs in here. So if we just fill that and then do an extrusion downwards. Oh, if we extrude that downwards on the z-axis, like a good 0.2 negatively, that should be the size of a stair. And we'll extrude, scale that out. Extrude z 0.2 negative. We're just creating ourselves some like round stairs going down. We don't need that many of them, but I think that's pretty good there. I did make them upright, but what we're going to want to do now is flip these upside down. So just rotate these on like the, well, actually, we're going to just press Control M Z-axis. There we go. We're using these mostly as a, wow, I really hate, why did I do that? Swap that back to Studio or Matcap or something else, please. And then I like this because what this will allow us to do here. Oh, you know what we're going to have to do here? Let's, okay, we're going to use this as our ground here. Let's grab the bottom faces of this thing and extrude it downwards or inset it downwards. Can we duplicate that down? There we go. Now, if we select this whole face on the top here and we bridge the faces, can I not do that? Why are we having to be annoying about this? I just want an actual volume to my ground here, guys. But what we should do is view face orientation here. Yeah. And this is all incorrect. So let's select these bottom boys down here. Well, really, all of these red faces is what we're going to want to select. I don't think we really care about that, but we do care about this bottom. There we go. And then we're going to go to Mesh, Normals, Flip. Now we can go turn off face orientation because we don't necessarily need that right now. We do Shade Smooth. Shade Smooth by Angle. There we go. And then now with this ground that we have here, let's use a Boolean and select our stairs. And we'll do fast because I always think fast works better, honestly. And we'll delete that. And we should have just our stairs on the ground there. So now we're going to actually have like kind of like these stairs on the ground as they're running through this environment, which is pretty sweet. What do they call those? What do they call those? I can't remember. They're kind of like pyramids, but they were in like more like Mexico. I feel like we could do more of that up here. Yeah, well, temples, obviously. I just didn't know what the there's like an actual name for them. So ziggurat, that's what I wanted to say, but I didn't want to say it out loud if it wasn't correct. There are a lot very square, like kind of like entrances to things. Just grab that bottom, and yeah, just more of an angle, I suppose. It's like a kind of like a tunnel going into the mountain here. We don't need to know where it goes, but it goes somewhere. And probably taking this, let's see, like a Boolean here. And if we bool that, we hit union, intersect, difference, fast, exact. What does that do for us? So that just cuts a hole. I kind of want it to, sometimes you can get it to bug out and do that for you. So like, oh, I kind of only added it to that part. That's like almost exactly what I wanted, but backwards. You could do fast, apply that. And then with this guy, all you have to do is just delete these vertices. And honestly, you're deleting these vertices too. I don't know why I added them on this side, but what you're doing is you're basically just creating that hole. And then you take this and then join it. And then you then take this left wall here. And we're just going to start merging all of this stuff together. So not that, but this. We're just creating a floor. And then you're going to create the ceiling, but we're going to do this wall first. Just because it's going to be easier. And then you're going to do the ceiling. Shade Smooth by Angle. There we go. There you go. Now you've got yourself a lovely kind of like hangar or something like that, like a tunnel that we're building into this wall. So there's like all those trees there. We're probably going to want some like overgrowth trees to happen here as well, kind of like to cover up the seam. I don't know what this is really right now, so let's just delete that. I think eventually we'll come up with a wall design because this will just be like art. I don't know how I feel about this edge of the kind of environment on this side. I do think that we like need to have some kind of reason. There's no reason for this. It just kind of like goes into it. Oh, it's feeling a lot better, guys. So this will kind of like be more mountainous up to this point, and then that's going to be like a building or something like that they're running up towards with the tank on the ground in front of it. But let's first take a look at this tunnel. This tunnel needs some love. It needs a little bit of love here, guys. I think if we edge loop this, I'm going to kind of round off the edges here. I think geometry nodes are like slowly making more and more sense to me. I had problems with Houdini getting into it because I just feel like the names of things was just off, and I probably could get it eventually. It's just, it was definitely different. Got all of our faces in here probably inverted the wrong direction. Let's go ahead and fix that. Face orientation. There we go. Yeah, the hard part for me with Houdini was that it was the names of the nodes are just like very, I imagine once you really get into it, it starts to become second nature. I need to get to that point, because right now with me with Houdini is like I really stumble through it, and I find tutorials hard to watch because you go like watch tutorials online, and oftentimes it the tutorials just tell you how to do it, and if you have the mind of like, oh, I'm just trying to do this one thing that I specifically need to do, then you will never really learn a software, and that becomes a bit of a challenge because you end up just knowing how to do the one thing that you googled how to do. You don't really learn how to actually do stuff. Delete only the faces, and then we're just going to go into here and then start to add in some edge loops. Oh, there we go, guys. That's the problem. Where's that? Now, is that connected to? Yeah. It's just not connected to the ground. Probably do that. We can fill that. I know that's not... Tries aren't good in this particular instance, but just cleaning this up so that way we can do a little bit of sculpting work, guys. Let's do this. Let's do that. I'm going to delete this face, and we will probably just fill in like so. So that face will be set. And yeah, we'll just have a bad face over here. It's fine. Okay, great. And then now if we did edge loop this, then we can really clean up the edges here as well. We're not going to use subdivide. I like to use multi-resolution, especially for sculpting, but it'll give us a very similar result. And now all we have to do is go over to our sculpt and smooth some stuff out. I'm going to turn off our face orientation. And then we'll just create a little bit more of a cave here. It's got to feel a little more natural. It's like extra objects. Add mesh extra objects. This will give you the ability to add in rocks and stuff like that. Very useful. The rocks aren't bad per se. I mean, they're free, so you know, like take it for what it is. But we can then use this to kind of like outfit this area to have a little bit more natural rock formations inside of them. Okay, that's not bad. A little extra rocks there with our cave on the inside. I don't like these stairs as they are right now. They're pretty basic, but they're just there for us to kind of work on our steps. I personally don't even like, I don't like them at all. And I think the idea is that I'm going to make this kind of like on the inside there, so that way stairs go back and forth. Probably not have this guy there, right? Get rid of that or move him further over. Believe we're probably going to have to flip this whole thing. I don't know. So if that goes there, you know what? We're probably going to need another edge loop here and then just extrude this outwards. There we go. Now we got like a bit of a face. We'll add in like all the railings and stuff like that as well. Probably add in a cylinder here. We'll create ourselves a bit of a railing, just a tiny little railing. And yeah, let's just duplicate this. Just kind of building this out here. Those railings, or at least the posts of the railings. Oh, what's the easiest way of doing this? Probably just applying our array, correct? Just adding more detail to the amount of stairs. Do width, depth. That actually kind of works. So now you've got like one surface for your stairs here. Do I have to go up? I'll go up. I don't care. And then we'll bring that down. I'm not like stuck in my ways. We'll just grab these bottom edges here. Just grab all of that all the way down. That's fine. If that doesn't perfectly line up, I'm like not going to dye over it just because it actually adds to the slight realism of it. And now we just do the same thing at the bottom here. Just select all of your vertices at the bottoms, and then we scale on the z-axis at 0. Which I believe if we do that, we also want to do mesh, merge by distance, and I'm going to actually add that to my quick favorites. That should just clean up everything for us. Great. Now let's go delete that. And then if we duplicate this, should work, where we could just move this up. And then we'll just make this, by sculpting it, we could do elastic grab and just kind of line this up with the wall over here. Just do like a cube or something like that. Just something simple. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. A lot of the times just using primitives is nice because, you know, you can pretty much create almost every object with like a primitive. Now, with these two, I'm just going to join them together, and I'm going to select these two faces here. And I have bridge faces, which works really well. It gives us this kind of like menu down here that we can then adjust the amount of smoothness that we want to have. Number of cuts, we'll probably just increase that slightly. To change the smoothness factor right here to get a nice turned edge on the face. Bulge that out a little bit more. It's okay if the inside edge has more of a 90 degree. It's the outside edge that we want to have that nice curve too. With that though, I'll probably want to select this guy. Let's go to top view here. And then just like place him on the inside of that railing. Just gonna scale that out a little bit and then more flat. And then with this, let's select everything now, and then we're just going to bevel it. Yeah, I might just do this more with a modifier then. I'm going to shade smooth that. Just increase the segments here. Probably not that many, but decent amount. I'm going to shade smooth and then by angle, which is a nice, easy way of making it so that way you got your smooth edges on your like kind of like your pipes, but then anywhere where there's like, I think it's a 45-degree angle, you can control what that angle is, I believe, inside of your settings for your object. Okay, great. So there's our railing, and then we're just going to want to keep duplicating this as we're going. So let's just duplicate this down. Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. So every fourth step we can have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll just duplicate that all the way down here. And with this guy now, let's just grab this edge, this face edge that's at the top here. And we're just going to want to extrude it, and we'll grab it down. This kind of works. All right, that works for me. And then now let's just fix some of these pipes that we've got going on here. Probably move that down, and then we're just going to rotate that edge. And I think I'm kind of fine with that top edge up there, but there's a bit of a railing now. Probably going to, for the sake of this, let's just grab all of these vertices here. We're going to delete them. If we want to re-add that, we have to create that from scratch. I kind of screwed up our stairs a little bit, but it's fine because, you know, we were going to retouch them anyways. So it's probably going to require us to start over. Let's grab this edge here. Just extrude that out. And just kind of building our way out in a natural way, not... okay, I swear I had that selected already. What the heck? And then we'll grab this edge here as the last ground piece. Just extrude that outwards. And that should be good for the ground. So we can actually now select this edge of the ground, and then we'll just extrude that outwards. But this time it's actual with proper quads. So any adjustments we make will be a lot easier to make because of that. Probably also going to want to have ground over here as well. So let's just jump in and extrude outwards. Just going to kind of match the amount of quads we need. Do that with a couple of these guys. Okay, with our railing that we already have selected though, let's select this, and this. And duplicate that, move that over. Probably align that a little bit better. And then now all we have to do is, there we go, invert those. And then next up, let's just duplicate this guy. Move that up, mirror it. Perfect. So now we got like a little bit of a railing, and then we'll just have to finish up the platform up there, which again should just duplicate and place that accordingly. Just grab the bottom of this and then stretch that out downwards. We don't really need to do anything too crazy. I'm just going to grab this edge though and then like just bevel it slightly. We need these railings at the top though. I didn't duplicate those. So let's just select these 3 or 4 and mirror those. Just line that up a little bit better. If we take this, we could probably take the sculpt of it. Let's just smooth this down a little bit. That way we can create a nice little platform up here. So like this goes back into the base, and then, you know, this can go this direction. Maybe this whole thing does go down. It's fine. And then so basically the rest of the base would be back here. We could probably have some kind of like house or something. We're going to build ourselves like a nice little outpost house that's back there. We're just adding detail in with cubes. That's all you need to do, guys. And then let's add in a nice door to this guy. Just grab this top here. Probably extrude scale it out. Yeah, nice little like, I don't even know what that is. Reservoir tank thing at the top of the mountain. Let's do this for right now. This is our, I don't even know. This is going to be our like jet plane, okay? And let's add in a Bezier curve. I'm just going to grab this edge all the way over here. Rotate that slightly. We're going to grab this edge, just rotate it. I'm going to scale it down, and we're just going to kind of have this go past them. Not too low, but we do want it to dip. Okay? And so then now, if we grab this cube here, I'm thinking, let's use a... Oh, is it not a modifier? I think it's a constraint. Then we'll do a follow path, and then select this Bezier curve as our path. Let's bring this all the way back there. Just rotate that down. Kind of get it to follow the path as much as possible. And so then now, if we go to this part of the shot, we want them ducking. So I'll probably have him all the way back here. I'm going to insert the keyframe. And then as they're ducking, we're just doing this for timing purposes here, but we'll then set another keyframe and then have that finish off. Set another keyframe. I'm going to just set that there. So this is going to be like, I'm thinking like a spaceship jet thing that's just flying overhead. Just scale that out slightly. Let's see. So I want them when they duck, it's already kind of flown by. Let's duplicate this path and then just make it a little bit wider or something like that. Probably grab that to be a little bit higher. And then, let's see. Let's duplicate this guy and have the follow path. We'll keep the same keyframes for right now. But instead of following the Bezier curve, we're going to follow this other Bezier curve that we created. And then we're going to grab the animation to be a little bit further behind. So that way it's like two jets kind of like chasing each other. And then of course we've got all these like kind of trees and stuff like that as well. To blend these trees into the environment, we'll probably go in, and then I'm using Botanic. You guys can use whatever, you know, trees or whatever like stuff you guys have. I'm using Botanic. Usually I can create some pretty nice shrubbery and stuff built into the environment. The real important thing with doing nature-esque type stuff is building on top of each other. It's layering things. It's not one bush that's going to then make it look, you know, realistic. It's going to be multiple, and it's the variation of the color and how they all work with each other and how they move and blah, blah, blah. So let's go ahead and save this. I like to then create a bit of a vertex group. So if you go to the data groups here, add in a new grouping called grass 1. That's going to be this whole thing. So I'm just calling it grass 1 because we're going to do separate groupings for different things. And then we'll go over here to weight paint. And now we're just going to kind of paint on the areas in which we want the grass to exist. So just, you know, feel free to be a little liberal with how you're placing the grass here. Although keep in mind, you don't want to necessarily have stuff that's not visible to the camera, because then you're just wasting render time on something that isn't going to be seen at all. Inside of our grass settings with this guy selected, for the scatter node, I'm going to select a grass type. We're probably going to match the rest of the grass in the scene. We've got kind of like this long, weedy type grass. And then inside of our density, make sure to select grass 1, so that way we're not adding grass to things that aren't necessarily needed later on. And this is going to create kind of like that decorative type grass similar to this. But we're going to want this to be a little more wild. Right now, it's very straight and very clean. So let's just change up the randomness here. Also adjust the phase of this just to give it a little bit more of that twirl. Let's try to blend these two things here. So we'll just do another rock generator. Okay, we don't like this. We're going to have to rework this whole section. We're going to go into here and then just add in a cylinder. Probably scale that down. Extrude that upwards. And then let's do like a extrude, rotate. I'm just going to... Actually, you know an easier way of doing that is just grabbing this, getting that to be like so, and then bridging that. We don't want a twisty. Okay, I'm starting to like this. Let's duplicate this guy here. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's a I don't think it's healthy to do things for the views as much as it is to like do it for yourself. If you're trying to learn how to be a better artist, then I think it's great to use that opportunity to use YouTube as a way of showcasing your work. Okay, that's working pretty well for me. We don't really care about where that pipe goes up there, just because we never really see where it goes. Let's add in like a subdivided surface just to smooth out some of these edges. I do think it would be cool to have some kind of like design going up this. That kind of works also. It's like a really easy way on cylinders to add in like a little bit of extra like detail. Let's see, we are currently in Eevee. Let's swap that over to cycles. I do like cycles better. We'll do GPU on this. And for right now, should be good on the rest of our settings. Boom. Okay, we got our USD. We go ahead and import that. Which, by the way, you guys can grab these files like this guy right here from Action VFX's website. Which this whole thing is still broken apart because, well, that's just the way it is. Let's go and delete this real quick. So that's sitting on the ground. That's probably about the right size, right? So there we go. We got our tank. I'm probably going to take this whole thing and then rotate it so that way it's not pointing towards them. I eyeballed that size. Okay, so we got these FBX for the fighter jets. Let's see what we got. Well, probably replace these jets. Let's do that. Let's go back to the first frame here and then do Shift S cursor selected. There we go. And then let's do File, Import. I'm going to do an FBX on this one. Just copy this. We're going to have to retexture all of this, by the way, because I'm fairly certain, if I remember correctly, none of... Yep, that's not going to work. None of the... yeah, the USD will be fine. Let's do Paste. USD. I think we have to make it so that it doesn't reset the... It's 1 to 83. I guess it doesn't really matter. I could just redo this every time. And then we just now have to make this smaller. So we'll do join, first of all, to join everything together. And then we'll scale it down. And as far as scale is concerned, it might be roughly the right size. Let's select this guy, and then we'll say cursor to select it. So that way the cursor is in the center of our jet here. And we'll do set origin to 3D cursor. So now if we want, we can rotate our jet independently. And let's select the cube, and we'll say Control P, Object, Keep Transform. And then with this cube selected, we will then make it disappear and then also not render. Duplicate this jet here. We'll say Alt P, Clear Parent, Keep Transform. And probably just place this over here, kind of like that. And then again, Control P, Object, Keep Transform. And select this cube. And then we'll make sure that it's not rendering and it's not visible. But with this guy selected, let's delete our keyframes here. And then probably set a keyframe. And then by the time he's out of here, we're probably going to have him even out a little bit. Realistically, this would be closed, would it not? I think this would be closed. Probably would. Let's do that. All this wonderful detail, guys. Yeah, this wonderful detail that we're going to be deleting here. Let's actually take this. We'll do object real quick. We'll view it in object. There we go. And then let's take this whole number here, and I'm just going to smooth it out a little bit. So let's go into sculpt mode. I kind of want to smooth that, so let's use that. I might, in front of this tank, put a little bit like rocks or something like that, like little pebbles. Ideally, what we're trying to do here is make these rocks feel... What? No, this isn't Last Airbender. They're not supposed to be floating in the air. Kind of just like sitting in front of it, so that way it does feel like it's not just floating on top of the environment. Yeah, I think now, next up, we're going to want to start working on some of the projection aspect of things. There's a couple ways to do that. For instance, let's grab this guy real quick. If we go to this is using a dry soil material, which we are definitely not going to want, so we'll just remove that. I'm going to create a new material called projection. And this is just like a quick, easy way of doing this. Probably going to want to have it anyways on this edge here. If we then grab everything, and we're going to create a vertical split here. Let's go to our UV editor. And I believe if we open this up as a shader editor, with UV maps currently, we only have one, which is just our default UV map. Under our data settings, I believe it's data settings. Yep, UV maps. We're going to create a whole new one. And we're going to call this one projection. I don't know if you guys can see that because it's all the way down below my head probably. There it is. I created one called projection. And now if we go over to this list, you'll see one called projection. And we're going to use that for this image. Let's do image texture. Let's open some kind of plate that we created. So let's go to the first frame, just grab that plate. Might even 17. Frame 17 is probably better. So 1 to 17. So starting at 1, and so then we're going to go to 16. Grab 16 because that's what frame we're on when we're on 17. I know, math's weird. We're going to plug this UV directly into the vector because we're going to be using this projection UV, not the default UV unwrap that we created, okay? It's important. So now if we go ahead and view this real quick, let's go to render view here. It's going to look super wacko. Let's go into edit mode, select everything, and say UV project from view. This is going to be from our view bounds, which we can then see here. You'll notice that our UV unwrap aligns with everything. Perfect. First of all, also you're going to want to swap this to ACES CG because it's actually ACES CG is what we're importing here. It's still doing the, I think it's still transparent. One second. Because it's under background. This all probably has to do with the motion tracking crap. Let's move this up and move it to foreground. There we go. Okay, great. So now we've got this. We'll do project from view, which we should be selected on our projection node there. And let's make sure under data that we've got that selected as well. Perfect. And then now we'll do project from view. And then using this, we should be able to project from the view. And I don't understand why that's not working now. Let's do, oh, it might be this actually. Let's apply these. Sorry, I had the wrong node selected. There we go. I knew I'd eventually figure this out. The reason why I had the bugs, by the way, was because this object here was under background instead of foreground collection. And when you use the motion tracking inside of Blender, it auto sets that up. And I believe that it renders it out as like a shadow catcher type of thing. As far as this was going, I had the wrong UV map selected. Now that that's selected correctly, if I move this around, you'll notice that this moves around with it. And now we've got ourselves an actual like kind of movement of like that object. The reason why that's really useful is because if we go into our camera settings here and then we go under film and hit transparent, and then if we disable everything here so that way we're not actually selected on anything, this object here will now move with the rest of your environment. We just have to fade between the two of them using some kind of like matte or something like that. That'll allow us to blend between what's real and what's not real. Let's change this projection node here. We're probably going to hit the save button on that, but then just swap this over to something else. Let's close this, open a new, and then we'll call this, I don't know, mountainside. And it's going to be kind of like our mountainside texture that we're going to have here. And then we're going to start to add in some materials and stuff like that in order to build out this environment as we're going along. And then we're going to need to do lighting and all that stuff and all that jazz as well with like an HDRI as well as some real lighting that we're going to add into the environment. Which let's, for right now, let's go and select, probably save that. Select the projection one that we have here. I'm going to add in an image texture, and we're going to create a new image texture. I'm going to call this, make it 4096 by 4096, and then hit new image. If we go ahead and view that real quick, you'll notice that it is just a black image that we just generated. If we go over into our texture painting now, and inside of our texture painting, we're going to want to paint specifically kind of like this edge here, right? Because we're blending from the real environment into whatever we have here. Okay, so let's start to paint this out. Oh, one second. I just realized our UV projection that we're using on this specific image is kind of whack. So let's, after this unfreezes, let's go back to layout. We're going to use UV image and then set this to UV map, which was what we set to smart vector unwrap, right? So like if we selected everything and then said smart UV project, it's going to create these islands here that'll make it easier for us to paint on top of. Let's delete that image and then hit new, and then we're going to call this matte merge 1, and we're going to make this smaller. Let's do 2046 by 2046, half the size. And then now if we go over to texture painting this, should be a little bit easier. Just make sure that we have the correct projection method on here. And now, yeah, then this will be a lot easier. Let's just go ahead and now paint this area. This right here, we're going to be using kind of like wherever white is going to be is kind of the area in which is going to be the original image. Let's actually make it so that this is going to be more of a transparent merge here. Something like that. So we'll go ahead and say this is matte merge here, and then we'll do image save. So we'll have this matte merge. Let's create another image texture using the exact same UV map, new, and then we're going to call this projection matte. Same 2046 and all that. So hit new. Let's go and view that real quick. Go back over to texture paint at the top here. And this time we're going to select probably that. That's all good to be new. And really we can select all the way up to this edge. That's totally fine. We're going to want shadows off of that tank here in the end, so, you know, don't get too close to it. I think that's really good there. So everything else is going to be kind of CG. Okay, so we're going to do a few things here. We're probably going to add in a transparent BSDF. We'll do a mix shader as well. And then we're going to first take this projection mat, plug this directly into the FAC. And then everywhere that we see a projection, we're going to want a projection. So probably also create a principled BSDF. And then that principled BSDF is going to be into the top here. Our projection that we have here is going to be into the bottom. And that's using this projection BSDF image that we just created. And then we have this transparent BSDF, which we're going to want to then drag over here. And we're going to use this other mat we created all the way back at the beginning. We're going to be using the same UV map for all of that. And let's see, do another mix shader here. This time using that into the bottom, this material into the top, and then this material for the matte merge. Now if we go ahead and view that, it should be a little closer to what we want. And as you can see, it's kind of erasing the edges there, but then it's also keeping things as well. We've got to be careful a little bit with that over there because the I think the project from view is coming off a little heavy at that spot. So we can actually fix this. All we have to do then is go into our 3D viewport, because at this point, theoretically, it's already kind of like erased completely. Let's do material view over here. Should be able to see everything a little bit easier. And we're going to just go into face selection mode and then just delete all the faces that we don't need. There we go. And then we'll need to go back over to our texture paint. And then from our texture paint, at this point, we can select probably our matte merge that we have. And then over in our data, we want to make sure that we're selected on the UV map. And now we could just go in with our tool and make sure that we're painting in a little bit of white here. I'm just going to be erasing the edge of this. If I deselect that. What I'm trying to do is just clean up some of this. This is causing me some problems. But if we just delete those vertices down there, it was creating kind of like this see-through aspect of stuff going on. Same with these rocks, actually. Which another way we could have done that without having to delete that would have been, let's add in a plane here. Just grab that slightly down. I'm going to scale that up. And this guy right here, let's create a whole new collection called Hold. And this plane inside of our outliner, if we just drag it and move it over into our Hold, we can add in a new thing over here for Hold Out. Just select that. Then using that, that'll erase anything that is behind it and allows us to have kind of like these rocks just like sitting on the ground there without having any problems. So there we go. Now we've got a nice merge between the real world and kind of like this CG world that we've got going on. We can blend in. I think this is only sharp edge that we're still seeing, which, you know, a lot of times with CG, you're just trying to blend between real and fake. And that's all we're doing here, is that we're just trying to create kind of like a little bit more of a realistic way for the environment to be connected to each other. And today we're going to be working on some nice textures and lighting, really. And we may do a little bit more modeling as well. Like I was thinking it'd be cool to have some pipes built into the side of this kind of like staircase here and things like that. So I'm just going to add in a nice cube here, or cylinder here. And we can scale that out. This is going to allow us to boolean into this object here. I do love me some booleans. Booleans work really well for just chopping things out. Though it doesn't work great for giving you good clean topology. And I got someone called me out on that last week. So now I'm all self-conscious about it. But we're going to extrude this inwards now, and then we can inset that into our shot. So that way we've got kind of like this little pipe coming out here. It might be a little too big, actually. So let's go back here. And we'll just scale that down. Let's see. Grab that outwards. There we go. Scale that down to roughly that size works for me. Take that and we'll scale that in. Now let's grab this guy, and he's onto this cylinder here. So if we hide that, we'll actually see our hole already created. And then let's grab this face here, and then I'm going to extrude that inwards, and then we'll inset that. So now we've got like a nice little pipe coming out there. I might do another one near the bottom. So let's Alt-H this. And we're just going to make sure that doesn't render. And if we grab both of these cylinders real quick, let's move that down there. Now with both these not rendering, we can actually disable them in the viewport as well. They won't cast any shadows or anything like that, but they are creating a Boolean on our object. The lighting here, if we're trying to match our actors as they're running, is kind of a little bit trailing behind them. You can tell that this rock surface here is in shadows, so the sunlight is kind of coming at a bit more of an angle from this direction here. There's not a lot of shadows. It looks like it's more top heavy on the shadows, like the shadows aren't super long, though it could be like around 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. My typical place that I like to use for getting HDRIs, because again, we're doing this you know, without any HDRIs, as you pointed out, Satya, where we kind of have to match this lighting ourselves. I like to use HDRI Haven. Again, I have a resource link below to the to a lot of these websites that we're going to be using today, and Polyhaven has a bunch of free HDRIs that you guys can grab and use for your own projects. I'm probably going to use this one, I think, so I'm going to download this. Cool. Once that is downloaded, inside of our Blender, let's go to our world settings and swap this over to environmental texture. Okay, first of all, we can tell that our shadows are kind of not lined up in the general direction that we want things to be. So we're going to do 2 things here, just so that way we can see what we're doing as well as working on this lighting here. Let's swap this over to Image Editor, and I'm going to load in our reference plate that we have. And then over here, we're going to open up Shader Editor. Shadows are very difficult on this one. You can't even see the shadows. One second, let's load in. We've got plate ref. Yeah, I don't know why my shadows are invisible. We'll find our plate, load in our plate. Let's do something near the end. So that's 1000. We'll do like the last frame. This is the actual plate. I believe we could adjust the color management settings here. So I know that this is ACES CG, so I'll just tag it as ACES CG and for our photo here. And again, just kind of looking at these shadows here. These are angled kind of this direction, whereas they should be angled more like this direction, I think. So let's go over to our shader settings here and swap that to world. And selecting our HDRI, we're going to add in some mapping and texture coordinates. I'm using Node Wrangler. If you guys don't have that enabled, go enable that. Node Wrangler is like the best internal add-on on Blender, so I definitely recommend doing that. Rotation, we're just going to adjust this now to kind of match a little bit better. And then we're going to start to notice that since we are projecting our footage here, that we're not receiving shadows. Might also make the shadows a little bit shorter if we can just rotate this. And then now the only thing we do have to worry about though is, let's go to wireframe here. Let's grab this whole bottom of your floor. And if we go to render view, I just need to not go past the blend mark on this. Oh, is that this? That's hilarious. It's not funny. It's bad topology, Connor. I think that's not going to break anything. Let's go back to render view. Okay, so here's how I'm going to do it. We have our special UV unwrap that we're doing for the projection of this camera node. Okay, we're going to use this as our material into our base color. It will automatically make it a color that doesn't look good in our particular instance. We're going to use RGB curves, drop that in, darken everything up a little bit, try to match our, whoops, am I not doing anything? There we go. Try to match our material here to the actual ground material here, and we're going to get it pretty close. And now the shadows are going to continue. I overly complicated it before. This is all you have to do. As far as the shadows though, in order for us to fix the shadows, we need this ground to be extended past the camera. So let's, we're just going to grab the ground here. There we go. And if we just go to top view now, I'm actually probably just going to extrude this outwards here. Perfect. And then we're going to fix our shadows that are kind of going out. Let's just grab that out and stretch this over here. We could do multiple projections. So right now we're using this UV unwrap here to project this specific frame. This frame is 1016. So let's do frame 1, so that way we can get as far left as possible. Now let's go over here into our UV projections. We're going to hit plus and call this frame 1. We'll call it frame 1 underscore projection. That way we know which one's which. Our UV projection up here, we're going to call this frame 16 underscore UV projection. And you'll see that we need to select frame 16 UV projection on that guy over there. But from frame 1 projection, let's go hit the view button on that. Swap this over to UV shader editor. Okay, fantastic. And then selecting everything in our comp here, making sure frame 1 projection is selected. Let's hit project from view. Perfect. And you'll notice that we have the same topology as from our camera perspective. Oh, whoops, I actually named the wrong one. Projection. We're going to call this just regular UV map. Then we're going to call this frame 16 projection. Now let's go to full screen here just so I can think straight. We're going to duplicate this, and we will move this to the top here. Using this map merge instead of this transparency, we're going to use this new frame projection. So that's going to go actually probably below everything. What we're saying is that everywhere that this map merge exists, we would like to project frame 1, which we will need to adjust this map merge later and actually probably rename it to something else. But for right now, it's going to work fine for us for this first frame. Selecting inside of your image tab here, we're going to find our first frame, frame 1000, change this to frame 1 projection on our UV, and then we're going to project that to the surface. So now everything here will be from frame 1. Sure enough, we're going to have some issues that we're going to have to work through, but now we're getting our shadows that are going all the way to the edge. So our frame 1 projection seems a little bit off. Also, make sure to select ACES CG inside of your thingy. There we go. That way the colors actually match. That's kind of important, selecting ACES CG as your color management for your photo that you're loading. I'm going to select this whole edge again. I'm just going to keep extruding it outwards. Probably add in some kind of vertices for us to be able to paint onto later. But if we select everything onto frame 1 and then again making sure that frame 1 projection is selected, we're going to press U and then hit project from view. There we go. And that's going to give us everything to the edge of the frame there. Another thing is we don't really need this stuff up on this mountaintop. I don't know why I was duplicating that stuff. That's certainly not needed. Delete the vertices. We don't have to be super clean about it either, I don't think. Should probably blend that edge a little bit better. Let's see. Let's go to UV editor now. Let's add in some vertices. More vertices never hurt anyone. So if we go to our UV map, we want to make sure that's selected as our main data selection here. And if we go ahead and select our map merge, which is what we're using to blend between our frame 1 projection and our frame 16 projection. Frame 16 is going to have this area of the ground, whereas frame 1 is not going to have that area. See, that's frame 31. So frame 16 is actually going to have even less, if that makes sense. So we're probably going to want to project everything from like frame 41 is kind of what I'm thinking. So instead of doing frame 16 projection, we're probably going to do frame 41 projection. So let's do frame 41. It'd just be more economical, honestly. So we'll swap that to frame 41 projection. And inside of the edit mode here, let's do project from view. Great. So now we have everything set up correctly there. And then, of course, under our photo here, we've got this guy, which is using frame 16 currently. So we're just going to duplicate that. I'm going to swap this over to frame 41 is what we're going to find. Duplicate, select frame 41 projection, use that as our vectors. And then we're going to swap that image there. And now I should work quite a bit better. All we have to do is adjust our map merge at this point. So we will go over here to texture paint. Of course, save before we break anything. And inside of texture paint, select our map merge. This is between our projection of frame 1 and our projection of frame 41 at this point. Making sure that UV unwrap is selected here in this menu. And which actually, again, I think I screwed that up, which that's fine, I suppose. I just makes everything a little bit more annoying because I'm going to have to redo my work. Let's go back over here to layout. We are on frame 41 and in edit mode. Just go ahead and project from view. So if we go back over here to texture paint, perfect. Everything lines back up. Awesome. We didn't break it. Okay, what we're going to do now is using this UV projection, we're going to blend. None of this needs to be frame 1. So let's just get rid of it all. We go to frame 1, which I don't have a timeline cursor, so let's go back over here, horizontal split, and do a timeline. There we go. Let's go to frame 41. And in this particular case, we're just going to paint everything here white from this angle. And we might be able to do black from right here. Perfect. So now this is all going to be frame 1 is what we're kind of trying to do here. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and save this image. I'm going to save as map merge 2 because we're updating our whole workflow from last time. And over here inside of our map merge settings, go ahead and swap this to map merge 2. And then using UV, we're just going to plug that in. And then we're going to swap out this with our FAC. And so now should have, that's all frame 1. And then frame 41, which I might need to do another one in between, but frame 41 is then going to be this image here. My brain is hurting on how I did this. I might need to restart this from scratch here because we're swapping up the workflow. So with that being said, I'm going to just delete everything. And we're going to start out from scratch so that way my brain can handle this. So we're going to use this principal BSDF. We are going to load in, let's load in our plate. We're going to load in frame 1000. And we're going to use, now we're going to use also the image texture of a matte merge. Okay. Material merge number 2. And then we're going to do a principal BSDF. And we're going to just plug this guy into the base color. Load in RGB curves to make it a little bit darker. Add in our, actually we're going to add in our UV map of projection for frame number 1, because this is frame number 1 right here. So that's frame number 1. So that's ACES CG. And again, projecting that, we should get pretty good results. And then using matte merge, we're going to swap between this principled BSDF and another principled BSDF. So again, just using that, we'll use this matte merge up here. And then we'll do a mix shader. And that's going to actually be under the white, if I remember correctly. Yep. So as you can see, frame 1000, it has the correct texture projected on this part of the frame here. And then when we get into this section over here, we're going to need a new frame projected. So we will load in another image texture. So we're going to load in frame 41. Actually, I'm going to load in frame 16 first. We'll do one at a time here. Use that instead of our base color. Duplicate that. Perfect. And then place that on that shader. Now we're going to need to duplicate our UV unwrap. Use frame 16 projection. Vector that. Go to frame 16. And we're going to go ahead and select everything here and then hit, oops, cancel. Select everything here and then hit project from view. That's going to fix the ground as much as possible, of course. I UV projected under UV map instead of frame 16. My bad. Okay, there we go. There we go. So now if we select map merge, you're going to see that correct there. Now, frame 16, let's go ahead and set that to viewed. Okay, we're going to go to frame 16 and then we're going to select everything here and then we're going to hit project from view. And then if we go back to our mix shader here, everything should line up a little bit better. And that needs to have our UV unwrap. So duplicate this UV map and then make sure the default UV map is selected on this guy here. Using UV map for the map merge, frame 1, frame 16, and then using this frame 16 for the photo. And I think this map merge here, yeah, it goes to the bottom of the edge there. So that's what we kind of need to fix. So going into our texture paint now, we need to make sure that we fix that. So go to your data selection and then make sure that UV map is selected. And we're going to want to select our black paint here. And frame 16 here is going to kind of cover this. We need to create a matte of this specific section so that way we can project everything properly. But we're basically just duplicating our entire workflow. So make sure to select project from frame 41. And then we're just going to have a project from view here. Let's go back to our UV again. We don't need to stay on that. But if we go ahead and duplicate this downwards now, we're going to select frame 41 as our projection. We will also need to select frame 41 from our photos here. And of course, we're going to duplicate our mix shader here, and we're going to create a whole new image matte merge basically for this last section. Okay, so we place this principal BSDF into the bottom of that, and then I'm going to create a whole new image texture all the way at the top, and we will do matte merge 3, 2048 by 2048. And again, we'll probably be using the UV map of the regular default UV map that we created for everything, and then that's going to get plugged into our FAC. But if we go over here into our texture paint and make sure that matte merge 3 is selected at the top, we can now paint in everything that we want for this frame and kind of merge that. So I think that should all work. So that's going to be all selected in our UV map. Let's go ahead and hit image, save. We're going to save that as merge number 3, lay this out. And there you go. That's already going to work just because we already have everything plugged in. So we've got that texture, and we might need to do like the last frame as well. So go here to frame 83. And we're going to do this one last time, guys. So duplicate that. Duplicate this. Whoopsies. Select this. Duplicate it. We're going to create a new projection called frame 83, projection. Let's go view that frame real quick. Select all of our vertices and then just project it from view on that frame. And now let's go back over here to UV map because again, we're going to be doing all of our work for our merge under UV map. Image texture, hit new, and call this map merge 4. 2048 by 2048 is perfect. And then we just plug this directly into our FAC. Make sure to use the same UV map, like default UV map for everything. And then this principal BSDF can get plugged into the bottom of that shader, and nothing's happening yet because again, we haven't created our matte. But with this map merge selected, let's go over here to our texture paint. See how easy this is once we actually have everything set up? Like it's really straightforward. You don't have to worry about much. It's just plug and play at this point. And then once that map merge is plugged in, we just need to make sure that using this last frame projection, which, sorry, we then have to select, that merges everything. Perfect. Now we have our original ground guys and we are casting shadows onto it. The one thing we're going to see is a lot of ghosting that's kind of happening here for our frames. And that we do need to fix. So in order for us to fix that, we can create clean plate frames of every single part of this. And I would recommend doing this inside of Nuke, doing some paintouts. But I want to create these paintouts in Nuke first, and then we can import those frames. And all we have to do is replace our image frames here inside of the shader graph. I don't believe we are using any of that. We're just using the frames directly. And we're going to go to the few frames that we are projecting on here. We have frame 1000. We have, yeah, so it looks like we're doing frame 1000, 16, I believe, 41, 16, 41, and 83. Which actually, funny enough, this actually is partly a problem. Let's swap this. I didn't swap this yet. That's 1041. This needs to be 1083. Okay, that's perfect. And then we're going to clean up that map merge back there in a bit. With that being said, let's jump over here and we're going to do frame 1 because that's our first frame that we're going to do. Let's go ahead and use our clone stamping tool inside of our roto paint. And then we're just going to go ahead and do really quick paint out. I'm not going to make this too perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. Let's go ahead and use a right node now. And let's go to material. And we'll call this DMP for digital matte paintings. And I'm going to call this frame.1234 EXR. Call this DMP frame. DMP underscore frame. And again, this is just going to be using ACES CG. So just go ahead and render out frame 1000. And then let's see, we're going to go to frame 16. Use the same roto paint node. And let's see, let's do both these paints here. And we'll go ahead and render this out, frame 1016. And then I believe 41 was the next one. And then finally, frame 83. Cool. Okay, so then that goes back over here. If we go ahead and change out our photos one by one, we have frame 1000. I'm going to find material, digital matte paintings, frame 1000. Swap that to ACES CG. Frame 1016, same thing. And then let's do 41. Okay, great. So now that should get rid of our issues with the legs just floating in the middle of the section. Now we have to replace all of this. This is supposed to be a actual wall that we're going to be doing. So we have to merge again because the piece of footage that we're using here, I think, is supposed to be kind of like a rocky kind of wall thing. Now let's create the merge of what this is to everything else. So we're going to create another image texture. And in this image texture, we're going to hit new. We'll call this one, let's call this rock wall merge. Now with our texture paint, make sure that UV map is selected for this. We're going to paint these areas here. And again, we're painting on this rock wall merge that's going on. And we're going to kind of paint all of this. We can go later in the frame as well. This is all supposed to be natural terrain. Okay, with this rock wall merge here, let's use a principled BSDF just so we could see what we're doing here. Place that down there. Another mix shader. We'll place that into the top of our graph there. Add our merge into that. Making sure to use this UV map as our projection method for the vectors. We're probably actually going to want to use this down here later as well when we load in our actual textures that we're going to use. Just as an FYI, make sure to always, especially since we're using multiple different types of UV maps inside of your single shader, it's important to kind of keep track of that. Wait a second. Let's select our camera here. Ooh, no. Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's do add image as planes, which again is another add-on that you should enable if you haven't already. And then what we're going to do here is load in our reference plate, which I believe is 3. Yes. Load these guys in. And then we're going to select our camera and then hit Control C, which is copy attributes, which again, another little add-on button that I would enable inside of your preferences. And then do copy rotation. And now if we go into edit mode and grab this guy, grab him on the Z axis here, we're just going to scale this guy up where he's just outside of our camera range. This is an Ian Hubert method. I did not come up with this. Okay. And then we're going to select our camera here and then hit Control P, object, keep transform. And you can see that we're actually adding these people in to our shot. If we go now to our camera settings here, and instead of using our reference plate 3 here, which was just projecting them on top of our footage, we're actually going to disable that. And then selecting our plane, we just want to make sure that's not in our holdout. It is in our holdout. So let's go ahead and grab that guy, throw him into our foreground. And you'll notice that these guys are super dark right now, but that's because they are being reshadowed, which isn't exactly what we want. So for right now, we're just going to place them directly into the surface, and we will use a mix shader node with that image going in, as well as a transparent BSDF. We could probably adjust this later, and of course our FAC coming from our alpha. Actually might need to swap that. So now inside of our 3D view, we actually have this plane of our people that are running. And they're actually in the correct spot because it's projected from this camera view, basically, of that footage. So with that being said, since our origin of our plane is right on the camera, and it's moving with the camera, by the way, so this is going to work for the entirety of the sequence, these guys will always be in the correct spot because it's just video footage that's being canceled out by the movement of the camera. And with that, we can actually go here into our material view so we can see this a little bit better. But you can see there's people here. Now they're floating in the air, but we don't want them floating in the air. We actually want them to be standing on the ground all the way over there. So if we scale this up, we can actually scale it up to the point where their feet are actually intersecting with the ground. And that's roughly actually where they're running in the actual scene. Here, you can see that they're casting shadows, but it's not exactly accurate to what we're going to want. So I believe if we use a solidify, we can actually make these guys a little bigger, just a little thicker. And that's going to allow our shadows to be a little bit more realistic in the shot. And now their shadows are going to match the CG shadows that we're adding in there, so we don't have to worry about shadow matching, because we're kind of like creating our own shadows and forcing those shadows to be the existence of what the world looks like. What I'm going to do is use a curve, RGB curves, and make sure that we're adjusting this base color here. I want to make these guys a little brighter. And now this is kind of the fun part. It's like, you know, there's a lot of creative like working with this. I probably have a little bit of light coming from the inside of this tunnel somewhere, so that way, you know, it's not so dead in there. For the actual texture of this guy here, let's see, what do we want? We want that kind of like rock wall texture type thing. Using Polyhaven, they actually also have textures up on here. So again, the link to this is in the resource section below. So we can load in some nice like cliffside rocks. Specifically, probably the cliffside rocks are good for this. So we'll do 3 textures that are kind of blend into each other. I think that's the move here. That kind of works. One thing to make sure of is that we're using a UV map for all of this. And we have to select this UV map as our vector, especially since we're doing like the whole workflow earlier. We're going to need to adjust the scale. So I like to drop in a value, and then we'll just make that value pretty high. And then I might, let's see, curves. Let's just make this brighter. Oh, my bad. Displacement's screwing that up. Let's not do that. Let's go into saturation here and then just adjust that. That's pretty nice. I like that. I'm going to use a new image texture. We're just going to create a new image texture over here. Let's call this cliff. Yeah, let's call this cliffside, okay? So, should work. Now with our principal BSDF here, we're going to have our main mix shader that's going to happen. And this will get swapped to the bottom of those 2. There's this guy here. And then we're going to use this FAC, okay? So this is going to be kind of like our middle. I think the best way to do this is that cliff side is going to be a separate texture, and then or a separate matte, and then cliff top is going to be a separate matte. And so then everything by default is going to be kind of like this white base color. that we have here. So everything is going to be kind of like default white. And then that way I can create kind of like that middle section. Since we're blending between 3 different textures, this might be the best way to do it. So again, let's go over here to our data, make sure UV map selected, go to texture paint. And now we're going to paint in the sides of our kind of surface. And again, this is a little bit more of the artistic part. Select this white texture that we have here, and then we're going to find our coastal sand rocks textures and import those. And again, let's just go and duplicate all of that. So we're going to use UV map for our vectors, and then probably adjust the scaling roughly the same, although it might be slightly different. I like the idea of just duplicating our texture color adjustments that we're making here. And so now what we're going to get is kind of like this additional shading at the top. Might even make that a little smaller. And that's going to blend between this top section here and then this cliff edge. Because rocks are going to be different on the side of a cliff compared to the top of it. Okay, now we're going to do another principled BSDF, which is duplicate this up here. And we'll get that mix shader going on. Image texture. New. And we'll do top. Merge this top. Let's plug that into the FAC. Making sure to use our default UV map as our vector. And with this top merge selected in our UV map inside of our data selected, let's go over here to texture paint. And again, we are editing top merge, which is just going to be the top, because ideally this is going to be the section that's under grass. And then let's go back over here to layout. And now we'll see once it loads in, these sections are the white areas. So we can go over here to our principled BSDF that we have loaded in and ready to go, and just load in that last and final grassy kind of like texture. So that's the brown mud with leaves. Select all those guys and pop those in, principled BSDF. And again, get rid of those displacements. We can use our mats later to adjust for those displacements of where we want those displacements to be. But for right now, we're just getting rid of them. I'm going to duplicate our UV map setup here and delete our texture coordinates and plug in our vector for our UV map, and then also adjust the scaling accordingly. I'm certain that scaling's about right. But now you guys can see we're actually merging between 3 different shaders now, or 3 different textures now, just using our painted on matte merges that we're going to do, or we use. And that works really well for terrain. It allows it to not feel repetitive and feel very duplicated. Is by using multiple different shaders. This works great for grass, because grass is just constantly the same thing over and over and over again. But in this particular instance, it works really nicely. Let's go ahead and save that, and then go from our camera angle here. Let's work on adding these displacements back into our scene. The way displacements work is via like multiplication of the values that it's trying to see. And easiest way to describe it is you have this displacement here, which is your black and white image, and it is trying to create the values of the ups and downs of a normal map, essentially. And the only way for us to dictate to the displacement here at the end of our material that something should or shouldn't exist is probably through some kind of merge node. Let's use a mix shader. So the way we're going to do this is not through a mix shader, sorry, it's a mix color node, okay? And the default value that we want everything to be is going to be black if it's not being used, okay? So we're going to use this displacement image values of these RGB values of whether or not something should be displaced. And then we're also going to be using our merge mat that we created on top of everything else. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So let's say this displacement here is this principled BSDF, and it's using this mat based off of this UV map. Let's plug this into the factor. Okay, now if we go ahead and view this, this will show you that everything that is black is actually what is supposed to be being used, right? So let's set this to black, set the B input here to the displacement here. And now you'll notice that the displacement is only appearing on the section in which we used for that mat. Okay, perfect. We're getting closer, okay, guys? What we need to do now, though, is merge all of the displacements that we have been using throughout this whole process. We've created 3 so far. So we have 1, 2, and this is the 3rd one. And we need to merge these all one by one in order for us to be able to get our material. So this is the black section here is actually the previous texture. So we can actually merge both these here using a mix color, of course. We'll use a mix color. and we're going to plug the displacement in from this section here to the, I think we could literally just follow this. It's supposed to be the B input. And then the A input here is supposed to be plugged into the displacement from that texture there. And then the factor is supposed to come from the cliff side right at the top. Should have a UV map input. It actually hasn't bugged out, but it potentially could in the future. So just make sure to have correct UVs there. But now if we go ahead and view this mix shader here, you'll notice that it's using a different displacement material on the side of the cliff face there than it is for the rest of the body there, which is perfect. And then of course, this would get plugged into the A input of this mix here. And so then now, of course, we're having different displacement for the top of this compared to everything on the side. Now, the only other thing we're going to need to do is use one last mix color. And then this mix color is going to be fully black on the B input. And we're going to be using the merge of where anything is, which is, let's see, matte merges. This is the rock wall merge. What does that look like? Let's just take a look at that real quick. Oh, perfect. This is the rock wall merge. And so we just need to take this value here. I know this is getting a little whack, guys, but then you got to plug that all the way over here into the factor, okay? So now it's actually backwards. That needs to be that, and then this needs to be black. So now it's only going to do displacements at the area in which this is located. And then everything else is not going to be displaced whatsoever, which I can't remember if it needs to be set to the value of black or if it needs to be set to the value of like 50%, like a 0.5, but we can test that out real quick here in a moment. Now that we have all of these mixes complete, we're going to duplicate our displacement here, plug that into our normals. Actually, we're going to plug that into the height value of this, and that's going to give us our overall displacement of what our rock wall is supposed to look like. And then this can then get plugged directly into our displacements, and our regular shader can get plugged into the surface. And then once that updates, we will have displacements only on the area in which the rock wall is happening, which is going to create some really nice realistic looking textures for us. I will probably throw in a math node here, and then we can multiply our value. If you're multiplying something by 1, basic algebra, it's not going to do anything. But if you're going to multiply this by like 5, it's going to make your texture much more vibrant because you're multiplying by a higher value. So that's one way of being able to adjust kind of the amount of displacement that is happening on your rocks if you want to adjust those. Perfect. Now we're getting closer, guys. By the way, this material is called projection. I'm probably going to call this projection plus cliff. Let's do that. Projection and cliff. I'm going to do image as planes, grab the z-axis there, and let's go ahead and place this into our environment. Perfect. And then with that being selected, I'm actually going to find it, and let's call this guy focus. Let's do some concrete work here. We've got a lot of concrete surface, so working with this, I feel like seamless textures can easily become repetitive, and so we need to find ways to break that up into different ways, especially since we have a lot of surface area to cover here. Doing some nice stairs is next on my list. I'll do the stairs and the railing today before we hit it. Let's go over to our textures, and can I do this with our concrete here? Let's do for our default concrete texture. Close that up a little bit. There we go. Let's see. We'll start out with, I don't remember which one's which. This guy. Let's see what you look like. You might look terrible, and I might say, yeah, nah. Just lift the shadows or the concrete, so that way it's a little bit lighter. I don't think the UV unwraps works really well for this. Let's do some cleaning up of our topology, guys. We did it bad in the first place, so we gotta redo it. Perfect. So now, here's how this is gonna work. I just have to delete these vertices down here. And we have to remake the stairs one by one, but it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, whatever, guys. Okay, let's make this a little bit easier for ourselves by selecting faces only. And yeah, so bad topology, by the way, is really bad. So don't do this. Close your eyes, guys. Close your eyes. Okay, perfect. So now if I go back over here to rendered view on our stairs, should have better UVs on this. Yep. We do no longer have janky UVs on our stairs, which is perfect. But one thing that we're going to do with this is we're going to do this. We're going to call this stairs underscore lower. And this one will be duplicate this guy. And we'll call this stairs underscore upper. Because I want to use the same kind of material for both, but you'll see what we're going to do here in a moment. So with our stairs lower here, I kind of want to not have this duplicating pattern over and over and over again. Again, we're going to do something very similar to what we did with the ground. We're going to kind of paint in different areas. More specifically, I want to have like stains in certain areas. So let's go ahead and first start out with like a new principled BSDF and a mix shader node on this guy. And we're going to plug this directly into the bottom of this guy. And we're going to create a new image texture that we will call stairs lower, and then we'll call this stains 1. Okay, and then we'll hit new image on that, add that color to FAC, and now with that guy selected, we're going to go to our texture paint area, and we're going to paint these stairs to kind of have these stains that we want. So this is why UVs really mattered before. And it looks like I'm still having some weird UV issues, but just mostly focusing on kind of like this edge issue here. We can clean up a lot of our stuff later. Now, if you guys are part of our Patreon, you may have seen this already, but we have a surface imperfections pack that I love to use for things like this. So we'll just load in some scratches or something. And you guys get access to this for free if you're part of my Patreon. Probably do this residue one here. We'll go back over to our tool settings, and then we're just going to make sure that texture is removed, but the texture mask is selected on that residual or texture residual that we just loaded in. And now you can see when I'm painting, it's going to add in some of this really nice, like kind of like material for us. Looks pretty good. I like that. So let's take that image, save. Okay, we're just going to save this and then go back over here to our layout. And now it's going to load in that kind of like white material everywhere that we're saying to do that. You can put whatever you want here. I like to sometimes load dirt textures or something like that into this. Might get better results though with having kind of like that other concrete texture that we loaded in. And then by default, they're going to be a little bit darker. I might even say, let's take a look at our roughness here. And using a color ramp, we can make this quite a bit more contrasty. Something like that. And then of course, we'll set that to view real quick. Or this material here is our stairs. I would say let's add in a color ramp on this and just make this a little bit more visible. I might even desat it a little bit. And we're getting a little bit of a sharp edge here. That is something to be a little bit concerned about. Although maybe not. But the reason why we're doing that, getting that is mostly because of it's using the exact same stairs lower. So to fix that, we can always just exit that, hit new, stairs platform lower. And then we'll hit new on that guy. And then we'll go to texture paint, fix that up. Yeah, let's do this. So we have this stairs lower section here. Let's keep these cracks, copy it. And so yeah, let's go ahead and select this stairs upper here. And this is just, oops, not lupper. Go ahead and save that. And yeah, let's go and select this guy over here. And we're going to create a mat just for this section. So go ahead and paste that. And then we'll do image texture. We'll call this guy stairs upper stains. We have no consistency whatsoever between our stuff, but it's okay. For right now, I'm just going to use a principled BSDF with another mix shader. Plug that into the FAC. That there. Save that. Go over to layout, and then we're going to do the same. Or for texture paint, we're going to do the same thing that we were doing before, but this time we're going to do it onto our upper stairs. And this one, I'm going to do a bit of a bigger move. We'll just do something like that. I think we need to have a little bit more kind of stain on the top, similar to what we did on the other one. So let's go ahead and create another image texture. It's just a bigger surface, so we have to have more breakups. Stairs, upper stairs. Stairs, upper stairs. There we go. And throw in another mix shader here. Plug that into the FAC. And again, we will just do another principled BSDF. Let's do a metal texture for the railing here. Now, we're probably going to customize this. I don't know that I like the base color, so we'll probably get rid of that. And then metallic-wise, we'll probably increase that all the way. Roughness, we'll get rid of the roughness. We don't need the roughness. And we'll probably do the same thing for this. So we'll do railing. Just that way everything's consistent. Swap this to 3D viewport. Go to this top section here. I want to actually add in some grass. So if we go to object mode and go to weight paint, just paint this guy in. Oh, that's a subtract. Let's do add. But as far as texturing goes, I think I'm pretty happy with the way these stairs look. I'm pretty happy with the way this cave looks here. So this is the folder, at least that I have. And we already imported the FBX, but they actually have UDIM textures with inside of all of their 3D models that you can load in. And the way UDIMs work is they have different designator numbers here. And it'll be a little bit easier to see if I just make this detail view. But you'll see that all of the occlusion files, there's actually 6 different occlusion files here that each have their own separate designation numbers. But with that being said, we are going to need to load these UDIM textures ourselves directly into our Blender. And I'm going to first start out by just grabbing our tank here. I believe that it's using the same material for all of these different pieces, which is going to make our life really easy. We just have to update one of the materials, and it'll update everything going forward. So I'm going to swap this over to a shader editor. But how we're going to do this is we're actually going to load in an image texture here. And we'll probably load in the base color texture first. So we have these base colors as 1000 through 6. And then we have heights, we've got metalness, we've got normals, and roughness. And your guys' may look a little different. This was pre-launch. They gave these files to me pre-launch. So I don't actually know what their latest files look like. I have to take a look at those at some point. But we're going to first load in this base color here. So we'll go ahead and click open on our project here, and I'm just going to load in the file path just to make it so we don't have to go find it. And then all you have to do is click on 1001 here and hit open image. It did auto detect it, which is perfect, and it loaded it as UDIM tiles. If that did not, and it loaded as single image, all you have to do is swap this to UDIM tiles. Let's see actually if this is going to load in our UDIM correctly though. So if we plug in our base color to our base color here, let's just see what happens. It should automatically load our texture in correctly because it's actually UV unwrapped exactly how we want it to be UV unwrapped. And now all we have to do is actually we're just going to duplicate this. I'm going to close that out and we'll hit open for the next UDIM texture. So yeah, let's load in probably our metalness. Let's do that. We'll do metalness next. Then we can do roughness. And again, this should load in all of the different UDIM textures for us. And we just plug this directly into metallic. It's looking good, looking good. And my idea is that we're actually going to create a whole separate kind of like paint on top of this. All right, so we're just slowly going to get all this down. Let's do displacement next, which should be your height. Load in another image texture. Okay, that loads in as a UDIM. We'll load in this as a normal map. We'll take this color and then throw this into, I believe, color. And then we'll take this normals and then we'll plug that into normals here. Should update everything. Oh, that looks good right there. They really make these models super high quality, guys. Definitely recommend just going to grab their models off their website. Okay, let's grab the height again as well. And then we'll plug that in through a bump. That's not bad. I don't like how saturated the tank is. I might change the saturation now that we have everything loaded in. Holy cow, I am getting the lags today, guys. Let's swap that back to 0.5. Nope, keep typing the wrong numbers here, guys. 0.5, and then we'll change the saturation here to maybe like a 0.9. Can we do that? That way it's only slightly desaturated. Okay, great. So that's our tank, and we didn't really have to do all that much work, and the reason why is because, you know, when you're using assets from somebody else, then you just kind of load them in. Let's see. We kind of need to do our fighter jet here, so let's click on our fighter jet. I believe I have the textures for that as well. That is this fighter jet. Load this in. So again, selecting our, okay, this one we're gonna have to do multiple stuff with because it has multiple materials that we loaded in, but it's pretty much the same concept. We're just gonna have to go through these one by one. So let's do the body first. Let's find our material that we have for our body. Let's load in our image texture here. And the way they're gonna separate this again though is through body as well as glass, because again, we have multiple materials here. We have body, glass. I don't know why there's multiple bodies. I wonder if we do size of body, this is body, ambient occlusion. Let's find this body base color. Let's just load this in and see if this works for us. It's going to load in as a UDIM for us and obviously apply our color space to it. Let's just turn that on. Great. And then this is located under layout. I'm going to take our jets here. Let's go to wireframe. I'm going to take our jets here and let's create a whole new collection. And then we'll call this jets, just to keep things a little bit more organized. I'm going to grab our fighter jet and then place it under the jets collection. Okay, perfect. Let's go back to render here. This should go so much quicker. But we're just going to be texturing this jet here. So let's load that in. So we've got the base color already loaded. Wow, that's so much faster. I don't know why didn't even think of that. I'm going to load in. So now we have the base color finished. Let's do metalness on this. Load the metalness into our metallic channel. Probably could just bookmark this as well, but and then we got normals. We'll do roughness next. Plug the roughness into our... Oh, that looks pretty sweet. Look at the details of that, guys. Let's do normals next. Plug the normals in there, and then we'll plug the normals into here. Do we have height? We do have height. We'll load in the height. And then we'll plug this in through bump. Plug the color into height for the bump, and then this into the displacement for the material. Let's do the glass real quick. Use nodes, and then we're going to load in some image textures for that as well. Let's do metalness for this. Plug that into metallic. Roughness probably is next. Let's do that one. Plug that into roughness. Because normally you want to select non-color, but there is no non-color option. And I'm wondering, it's not going to be raw. Because this is all just the ASUS management here. So we got Blender. Actually, interesting. They do have Blender, DCI, XYZ, false color, Filmic. If your point is that you should only have the best inside of a multi-million-dollar film, you shouldn't have bad CG or bad AI. I guess that would be my little knockback, would be that that's not the case, at least in regular stuff. To normal map, plug that into the color, and then plug this into the normals. I think if you do, can you do color to... I know that would be color to normal map. Let's go look at the body again real quick, because I know that that's what's screwing this up on the wing. So if we unplug that, then it kind of fixes our problem. But then we don't have normals. Let's see what that does if we unplug it now. Wonder if the strength was just too high for these under textures. I'm wondering if it's just loading in the same body base color. Yeah, because that's the only textures folder I have. So let's just see if this works correctly. Yeah, that's all correct. So what we're going to do actually is we'll just, because we already did all the work, we're just going to copy this and delete that, and then paste this, and then add all of that in. Perfect. And we'll do the same for this. Which, actually, I think this is supposed to be the wheels, so we might not have to do it at all, because I did delete the wheels last week. And then this was all done as well. So once we did the one jet, it does both the jets. So now we're kind of in a good place with that. Let's finish adding textures to everything else here. And then we'll go in to add some dirt and grime to this. And then I think we'll do a little bit more paint work on the stairs over here, since that's our main objective. Let's take a look at this concrete wall over here. Probably going to look into making some, I always like to just look up some references of what this potentially could look like. Let's add in a cube, do that, and then I was thinking just rotating this slightly, and let's just duplicate this cube. This will just make it easier for us. If we duplicate the cube and scale it on the z-axis here, we'll take the ground, and then now if we use a Boolean and select this other cube that we have here, just apply that real quick. Should just have a hole. And then now just take care to grab the correct vertices. There used to be a feature in Blender, and I don't know if they got rid of it or what happened to it, but it used to be a smooth button where you could just, you know how you could subdivide smooth? I think you can. Let's see, where is that? Subdivide. Well, there used to be a function called subdivide smooth. And then on top of that, there was another one that was just smooth. So you could select your vertices and then just smooth them, which was pretty sweet. Here's what I'm going to do actually with these. Let's create a vertex group and click assign, but this is just going to be manhole, just because I want to do something else before I do that. Let's just grab these vertices and then smooth this out a little bit. Perfect. So now if we go ahead and click select, that'll just really quickly get that for us. And then let's just extrude that, scale it in, move it down. And there's our manhole on the ground, guys. I think we're probably going to have to add in additional textures and whatnot, just that way it doesn't feel super, like it just feels like we're stretching the vertices and whatnot into that. That's a good start. Go ahead and save this now. And the way we'll probably end up doing that is we have this crazy complicated texture system that we already made for this whole ground here. All we have to do on top of this is, I think this is all projection over here. So now if we just select our regular UV map here, I'm going to duplicate that. And then let's create a whole new image texture on top of this whole thing. We'll create new, and we'll call this manhole matte. That could be pretty small. New image, load that image in here, and then now let's select that. And if we go over to texture paint now, while having that manhole selected, and then now that we've got that, your manhole is selected. We just need to paint this thing, guys. Got our manhole mat, and probably set that to white. That's fine. But then also our tools. Let's find our texture mask. We're going to remove the texture mask. And then for the most part, we're just painting this. And then we might use that same texture mask we already have loaded. So select that texture and select black, because we're just going to be eating away at this. We're basically using this as an eraser, and then just fading in the ground. Wonderful. All right, then we hit image, save, and then we'll go ahead and save this over to our materials folder as the manhole mat. Now, if we go back over to our layout using that mat, we can actually then fade between another texture that we may already have. I don't think we have any dirt texture, do we? Brown mud. We've got brown mud, guys. That's good enough for me. And I'm going to just duplicate this whole texture here. Let's just do duplicate. We have that new mat we just created over here, so let's grab that. And then we'll just do the same thing we've been doing. Mix shader, and then the top one, and then the bottom one goes to our principal VSDF that we just duplicated. And then this whole manhole mat as our FAC. And then if we just go view that now, it should just transition between our regular texture and everything else. Let's select our ground here. We're going to select everything, and then we're going to create a whole new UV map. We'll call this manhole. Selecting manhole, and we'll do smart UV projection. And then now, select your UV map as your main one that you're viewing. However, your texture, you don't have to do this. If you just did this correct from the beginning, where we just unprojected again, then you wouldn't have to worry about this. But I already did the matte painting, and I didn't want to have to redo the matte painting, so this is just me being lazy. I'm just swapping this over to our manhole UV map, and that's going to use the manhole UV map for our mud that we have here in the ground, and then it's going to kind of fade that out. It is not the correct material, and that's just because it's too dark compared to everything. So I may just take in some RGB curves, and let's just lift this up slightly here, and that way it's a little bit more dried out. Just try to match this as much as possible. That's kind of fine. I may want to fix this edge here, because that looks like looks hand painted. This roughness though, let's just take a look at that real quick. May take a color ramp, plug the color ramp into the roughness of this whole thing, and then just let's go view this again. We just want to have a little bit more roughness. And then now if we go view our mix shader, should be a bit more correct for us. Perfect. We may also fix this overall edge of this thing. We do this also in sculpt mode. Just smooth that out a little bit. We always have bad topology we want to fix, guys. That's the secret. Use multi-resolution and then subdivide this. Let's all subdivide it. And then now if we go over into our sculpt mode, we may be able to do a little bit more cleanup on that. Let's do bevel the edges here, and then we'll do apply scale. Change our segments here to be a little bit more, and then change the sizing of our beveled edges to be a little bit smaller. And then now, selecting this edge again, let's go back over into texture paint, and we're going to make sure that this blend is a little bit further. I really like it, but I think we want to have more of it. With that selected, and not brown mud leaves, but our manhole mat selected, we're going to paint on just a little bit more. Save that, and then go back over to our layout here. See what that, okay, so that's with our whole mat there. And of course, the more or less we want to have a mat kind of mix into stuff, we can always throw on a color ramp after this mat here, and we can increase the contrast like so, and so that way it kind of blends in a little bit better there. I might actually also increase the contrast that way. I like it fading out very slowly, because that allows it to blend into the environment a lot better. So now if we just zoom that out there, guys, kind of just have this hole in the ground. I may go into our materials here, and then we'll just find stairs lower. That's kind of almost good. It's not quite good, but it's almost good. Let's take this and let's open up a UV editor here. Let's do, I like that. This is just me being lazy, because we could totally paint ourselves a new material if we wanted to. But why paint something new when you already have something created? Let's do scale X here, and then just scale that in. Just line that up with the edge there, so that way I'm still getting kind of a bit of a corner. What is this? So that's our focus. Let's change our camera here to be using depth of field, and then we'll set it to focus. And then that way, if we do a 1.2 or something like that, I somehow don't like it still. Let's grab this by the Z-axis, make that a little thicker. I might extrude that inwards. So now we've got a bit of a manhole floor thing. let's get on to doing some of this piping in the background over here. Let's load these textures in one at a time. So we're gonna do this guy here. We'll call this pipe, and probably going to swap this over to a shader editor. All right, Control Shift T to load Node Wrangler. Right? Is it Control Shift T or Control T? No, I thought it was Control Shift T. It is Control Shift T. I was correct. Go to Materials, Textures. We're gonna use metal. This metal sheet here, metal 2. Load that guy in. Let's UV unwrap all of this, because I don't think it's UV unwrapped correctly here. Probably apply the scale first. Smart UV project. Booyah. We may want to make some adjustments here in a second, but I think that's pretty subtle, and it's in the background. Let's do the same thing for this guy here. Aqua Docked. Load that. Textures, and all of those guys. We'll apply the scale on that. Do Smart UV project here, and then do that for this guy, and that should work pretty closely. We're gonna just make sure that our scaling isn't off, because I think we're gonna need to adjust all of this as well. And we'll set that to like a 4 for right now, and just plug the value into our scale for our mapping. It might be a little dark, so let's boost the base color of this. That's what our base color currently looks like, so we'll swap this over to a RGB curves, and let's just lift this slightly. Perfect. It's still going to be metallic and everything, of course. Just go view, see what that is. I think we're going to use that same thing for back here on the aqueduct. Let's go find it. We'll select everything, and then we'll just hit Smart UV Project. I always like to apply the scale as well while doing this. So just hit Control A, apply the scale. And then, of course, our big aqueduct piece back here. Just Smart UV Project it, or unwrap it, and then select our aqueduct. Then we've got these guys, which... what kind of materials do I already have? I've got this piping. I might just select the piping. I like to use a lot of the similar textures as we're going about this, because there should be, if you think about architecture, there's probably going to be a lot of similarities on, you know, things as people are building them, just because, you know, they're kind of keeping visual consistency throughout. Let's grab this guy. He's kind of seeming a little alone right now, so we're just going to duplicate him. Just going to make some adjustments as we go, and just probably turn off our, keyframe adding aspect of this. And then this manhole is a little small. Let's go over into our 3D viewport over here and just kind of go to top view. We'll turn on proportional editing here. All right, that looks pretty nice. Let's go to render view here and kind of see what we're doing here with building everything up. All right, that's looking pretty nice. I'm not a huge fan of this tank though. So let's spend a little bit of time on this tank, make him so that he feels really set into this scene for us. I want to hide this as much as possible, so maybe the solution to that is by adding some of our own rocks into here. Rock generator. Can I rotate around? Yeah. That way we're seeing things from the same angle. Let's scale that down, and then we're just going to kind of duplicate our rocks and match the overall kind of mood of these rocks. These are going to also be, we're going to put some shadows on these, and then texture these, and then that way things won't feel as flat. All right, let's load in some rock textures. Probably go find some nice good old rock textures on the website. We'll just add a bit of randomization so that each rock is different. But we're going to do this to one rock at one point. So hit New Rock, and then let's go over here to our nodes, and let's unzip our rock texture. Perfect. And we'll load in our texture here. So we'll do rock, boulder, dry, textures, load these guys in. And let's go find that one rock that we are texturing right now. Let's go to render view on that guy. And then one more thing we're probably going to do is we're going to want to have a color ramp. And then we'll swap this over here to constant. And then instead of UV, because each of these are probably not going to have UVs, let's use object for our vectors. Either that or generated. Probably object was the best out of those that I liked. That works pretty good for us. Next up, we're going to have, this is going to be a color ramp. And if we use object info, we can plug this object info from random into color ramp for the FAC. And then that's going to pick a random position here. So then now we're going to have multiple positions. So gray all the way up to full white. So let's do that. Several different ideas of what this could be. And then make this like slightly yellow for one of them. This could be a little bit lighter. And then this one here, let's just make that pretty dang light with a slight tinge of greenish yellow. Go and save that. And so now it's going to be taking a random factor of this color ramp here. And we're going to be taking that and we're going to be multiplying that onto our main base color. So now we just have to use a mix color node. And if we plug this color into the A input of this color, set that to 100%, and then we're going to multiply whatever color value we have here. So we're multiplying this color against the base color of the actual texture that we have. Then we will output that to our base color. And that's going to give us random textures for every single rock that we do. Now I think we can select all of these other rocks like so. Might even select the rocks over there, but let's Control Z that for right now. And if I press Control C, we should be able to, I think it's link materials is what we want. Oh my God, that worked. Now let's go to render view and we should be able to see all of the rocks. It's pretty good, but I want these to be brighter, I think. Let's do brightness and then boost this by like a 3. Boost that by like a 2. That works for me. And that way each of those rock textures are slightly different. Which, by the way, let's go select this rock on the back rocks. Probably want to do all of these. This is looking pretty good, guys. I'm pretty happy with how everything looks here. I think the only thing I want to fix up here, though, is the tank. I'm thinking I want to make it feel more dusty. We've got this guy. How do you select? I just want to select everything that is my tank, and I don't know if there's an easy way of doing that. So that's my jets. I'm going to create a whole new collection here for tank. And then let's select our Abrams tank right here, and then you just do select hierarchy. I'm going to just drag this into its own collection. And now I kind of want to comp in some like dustiness to it. We could do that by, I think, layering stuff. So it's got to be very metallic underneath everything. We're going to do it as something. We're going to do something special, all right? We're going to create a matte using direction, because obviously dust is going to be from top down, and that's the way we're going to want this to kind of like feel like we're dusting this this guy. So let's do texture mapping. Let's do an image to texture, and then let's using this texture coordinates. Actually, just delete that. We only need the texture coordinates. I want this guy. Place that on the surface. Okay. You'll notice that blue looks like it's on the bottom. And we actually want green here. So there's a couple things we can do. First of which, actually, a really easy way of doing this. I just realized that I never thought of it doing it this way before. Let's plug this into the surface here. I never thought of doing this before. But with like a regular RGB node, we could actually probably use the color picker. Boom. Now we've got ourselves a green. Because we're basically saying, hey, this is what we want. And now all we have to do is do a mix color using the normals of this and the RGB value of this guy. We have to do, instead of mix, do difference. And then now if we plug this into the surface here, is it difference or is it minus? I think it's minus. Let's do subtract. Now if we do a color ramp, this will convert it to like black and white values for us. And it kind of makes everything black from the top and then white from the bottom and sides and everything like that. That's perfect. So now it's only black from the top of our entire texture there. Now all we have to do is just invert this, and then we'll have a matte from the top, right? Let's do this in material preview, and this should just give us the top-down view of our texture. That's pretty cool. What is this? How am I getting that texture? Why is this like strangely... Is that because of the displacement? Oh, it is from the displacement. That's pretty cool. That's actually super cool. Let's take what does this displacement look like? Let's duplicate this displacement. Yeah, baby. This actually works really nicely because they already actually have this. We don't need our dust textures that we have. Let's then go into a mix color here. And then we're going to set this to be black. We're going to set this to be black everywhere in the A. And then in our B, we're going to be using this UDIM height map. Just plug directly into the B input. And then for the FAC, we're going to take our color ramp that we already have here and then plug that into the factor. Let's just, for right now, unplug our displacement. So currently it's just viewing the overall matte from the top view. But now if we set this mix shader to the surface, we will have that dusty, we should have that dusty texture. Might need a little bit more contrast. So let's add a color ramp in there and just make this a little more contrasty like that. And then let's take our other texture that we have and then we'll subtract this texture from it. So it doesn't feel too repetitive. Let's do another color ramp and just make this a little more contrasty. We want our whites to really be white. Okay, and I'm just going to delete that. But we're going to then use this as our color for the A input. Oh, no, sorry, our B input. That's what we want that to be. And again, we're going to go preview this mix shader now. Plug that into our surface, and it should only have, yes, this at the top layer. It should not have it on the sides. And that's because we're using our normals to dictate to only put dust coming downwards via our matte that we created earlier. Perfect. So now this whole thing just gives us a matte. All right. That's all just a matte. And now if we take our material output and just move that over here, we're just going to view our main Abrams texture again. Now that's nice, but we're going to want to have that dust layer that we were talking about to be on top of everything else. And that might just be, if we grab, might want it to actually be a dust texture, because we could just make it any color. We could just make it a color, but I'm wondering if dirt, like a light colored dirt, might be nice. Okay, great. Let's load in a new principled BSDF here. Just move this out of the way somehow. Let's put that down here. And then we're going to load in that new dirt texture. And we don't need this to be our displacement. Yeah, let's remove that displacement. We don't need the displacement. But we are going to do a mix shader up here. So let's add in a mix shader. Select that to there. And then this guy is going to go into our bottom shader section. And of course, our main displacement of everything is what we're going to be using to dictate this displacement. Although we could mix our dirt on top of that, I kind of feel like the dirt is a very thin layer of dirt. So it shouldn't really be that overpowering that it changes our displacement of our main metal texture. And then we're going to use this mix node here as our FAC between the dirt on the top and the Abrams metal texture on the sides. And we're going to see our dirt kind of getting added into our overall scheme of things, which is pretty nice. So we've got clean metal on the side and we've got this dirt on the top. I will then adjust our value here to be a little bit larger for the scaling of our dirt, because that seems a little big. So if we then increase the value here, it'll actually increase the scaling of our dirt texture there. Now we're getting these really nice realistic dirt stains that are on top of our material. We are getting a hard line. Now we're getting this nice dirt kind of on top of everything. Okay, let's unhide everything and just see what it all looks like. So we're going to enable our rocks. Okay, let's go ahead and enable our layout. Should have loaded in everything. It's just taking a moment to refresh its synapses. Okay, refresh your synapses so that way we don't die here. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna let's copy these rocks here. We need these rocks to have textures on them. Currently they do not have any textures, so just select all of our beautiful pebbles. Doesn't hurt to apply the textures multiple times. All right, we select these guys and then we select one of these and we press Control L and we do link materials. Does that work for us? Select one of these random rocks now. Hell yeah, it did. All right, let's go ahead and save that. All right, guys, that's pretty sweet. Let's see, these guys are running in front, kind of like that mouth of the cave. I might want to have a little bit more light coming from there, you know, just a little bit. Okay, that's cool. Let's add in some kind of area light that's rotated that direction like so. And let's go to top view here. I'm going to put this more in the back corner. And then what we're trying to do here is just add it so that it looks like there's something around the corner. I know I did something last week. I just didn't like the way it looked. So this week we're going to adjust this a little bit. Might make it a little more bright though. I'll show you some of my render settings that we're going to do here. I am not going to render this on stream. We're going to work on this next week in comp. Go down to CryptoMats and always turn on objects and materials. You probably only need, I like to have both enabled just in case. Because sometimes, for instance, this is going to have the same material as the other jet, but I might want to have one of the jets and not the other one. That's sometimes the same case. And then, of course, the rocks are all the same materials, so you're probably not going to want to have to adjust every single one of those. But that's of course, up to you. UV is sometimes really good to have, but normals is what's really important to have turned on, because this will allow us to relight stuff inside of our Nuke comp next week. So make sure that normals is turned on. And then we don't need our mist or Z. I think we're fine with both of those. And that should be good. So those will be our render settings. We'll go ahead and save that. And then next up, of course, is color management. This is already set to ACES CG inside of our main render tab here. And then of course our output, we're using AVI raw right now to output this thing, but we're not going to want to output it as AVI raw. Whoops. Let's go back to our, I'm going to create a new folder, call this out. And inside of here, I'm going to call this version 1. And then we'll call this today's date, I guess. We'll just call it that, I suppose. And then instead of AVI raw, let's swap this to OpenEXR multi-layer, which looks like you guys can't see because my gigantic head is in your way. But yeah, you'll just have to trust me. OpenEXR multi-layer is basically we're setting that to. That's one thing to turn on there, is make sure that's 2K. And then of course we have motion blur enabled inside of our render here. And of course we're gonna also want it to be rendering out transparent. So those are those render settings that I would recommend for this. And then what we're going to be rendering out is only this section here. We're not going to be rendering out the background of our footage. It's just the foreground, and then we'll be blending everything back into our original footage as well. I'm thinking the only thing that I really just don't like right now is that this is a hard line over here. An easy fix for that is just taking our rocks that we already have and then just creating like a fake boulder set. We just have to make sure everything is color matched next week, because otherwise that'll be pretty obvious that these are different rocks. Into my Nuke comp here. And this does not have any motion blur. I actually unchecked the motion blur inside of Blender when I was rendering it out, because it created this really, I'll actually show you. I actually have both these imported here. It made things too motion blurred. You can compare that to the background plate here, to the foreground plate of the CG that we have here. It makes things too motion blurred. We're not using over half this crap anyways, honestly speaking. Actually, we'll just delete everything. Let's just delete everything except for this. And then we're going to actually have to import our visual effects plate again, because I actually just deleted that. But this will give me an opportunity to show you kind of what we created over inside of Blender. This is the output that we currently have from Blender. This is the foreground piece, and we're going to want to have our visual effects plate in the background. Now, I rendered this out over into our plate folder here, so let's just go ahead and import that. And I am using inside of Nuke an OCIO of the same one that I'm using in Blender. You can actually see I'm pointing it to the Blender data files folder, but this is actually the ACES pipeline. So when it says scene linear here, it's actually tagging this as ACES CG. So our foreground plate is ACES CG, our background plate is ACES CG, and then we'll be comping both of those together inside the same world. And this is where having two different programs speaking the exact same language is extremely important. And then we're going to just set this a little bit more correct with how our B pipeline should be, with our main plate being here and then this done over here. Now I've done, I did like a little pre-comp, which I'll just delete all of this stuff and we'll start over. But having our footage imported, the first thing we'll notice is that it's actually not in the RGBA channel. And that's because we're using multi-layer EXRs inside of Blender. So drop in a shuffle node here, and let's go ahead and swap the input here to foreground combined. And that's what's going to happen like this. So using a shuffle node, we can drop in just a shuffle node like this, and changing the channels here on the B input, we'll just swap this over to combined. So we will be utilizing that later. So first, let's just swap our combined to our regular RGB channels here that we can then comp everything in. And as I mentioned, this is all at half resolution. So we're going to want to reformat this to be our full res, which again, we can set to 2K DCP 2048 by 1080. And we're going to format, let's see, we will then check this. Yep, that's correct. And then now if that's reformatting everything, we will then just merge that over top of our comp. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to have to do some color correction specifically on the grass here, because that was something that we were using from Botanic. You'll notice that the grass doesn't really line up and it feels like it's from a different world, and we kind of want to make sure that everything fits with inside of that world. And this is where doing some proper color management, or not color management, but color grading inside of your comp is really going to come in, as well as those crypto mats that I was talking about earlier. So let's go ahead and import those crypto mats. We're going to do everything after this time offset here. And again, the difference between the motion blurred version and the non-motion blurred version is just that right there. I personally think that just looks a little too, we can add our own motion blur in. We don't need to use the motion blur out of Blender, and we could do all of that within comp. We have a lot more control over that inside of the comp. So let's go ahead and first add in like a grade node here, and then we'll go ahead and add in also a crypto mat that we will do as well. Now, if I plug this crypto mat in and we just look at that, if we just view the crypto mat here, you'll notice that everything kind of has this everything has a different color associated with it. And that is all controlled by our crypto mat object selection here inside of our properties. So using our color picker tool inside of our properties over here, we can actually select specific elements that we would like to color grade. For instance, we're going to want to select all of these trees. Now, again, as I was saying right before we went on to the whole camera thing, we could select everything by crypto object, or we could select it by crypto material. And this is very useful if you have a lot of different objects that are using the exact same material, but you're going to want to change all of the materials inside of your scene to that object. So, for instance, in this particular case, with the objects, let's see, all of these rocks, for instance, have the exact same material. So if we do that, we'll see that all of the rocks are actually selectable by 1. That's really useful if you're like, hey, all of the rocks in the entire scene, I want to make an adjustment to every single one of them, even though they're all a bunch of different objects. That can be a very useful way of being able to adjust all of that. So in our particular case, we're going to keep it all as object for this specific thing that we're trying to adjust. And we will select, maybe actually, I like material because all of the grass is on 1. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll select everything by material, and then we'll select these branches. We're kind of selecting all of the trees here. And if you see, if I go into the alpha channel now, you'll notice that all of that has an alpha selected on it specifically. And this is going to be very useful for us. So we already have our grade node set up over here. And if we go view that, again, we kind of have this entire environment done. We'll go ahead and select the mask and make sure that this is visible over on the vertical view as well. We'll go ahead and select the mask here and then just plug that over into our crypto map. Now, if we go ahead and view our merge node here, we can actually make adjustments to this grade input that we wouldn't otherwise have. Next up, I like to disable this. This will make the next stage a little bit easier. Let's go ahead and zoom in on our footage here, and you'll notice that this green here doesn't really match the saturation color that the background greens are. So we'd like these two things to match each other as much as possible. So something I like to do is select the color picker tool on our white point, and then select the highlights of the green inside of our tree value here. And then we'll go ahead and select the black point of our tree and set it to the shadows of this tree. All right. Now we're going to want to map these two values to our tree colors back here. Again, because we're just trying to match all of this stuff. We'll see how the rest of the bushes look like with all of that as well. But we're first just trying to match these two things. So we're going to set the lift of this value here. We're now going to map it to, let's just say we want to do this tree here. I feel like it's got the same comp. So the lift is going to be your shadows. Let's go ahead and select the shadow value of that lift. And then the gain is going to be the highlights. So we'll select the highlight value of that. Now, if we re-enable this, you'll notice that these trees here kind of match these trees back here. I find now that if you just mix this back in slightly, you'll kind of be more in that world that you're going for. The shadows are less harsh. But of course, our actual grass doesn't look correct whatsoever. So we're going to actually want to fix this. We're going to fix this by just making it separate crypto mat layer rather than actually selecting everything. We are fine with doing all of the trees at once, but let's just make these grass elements done after the fact. So we'll go ahead and select another crypto mat. Let's go ahead and add in another crypto mat. Again, plug this like so. So yeah, we'll have another crypto mat here. And then again, we'll just zoom in. If we view this crypto mat layer, we can actually select our grass again. So let's do material. And let's go and select the grass. These are all these bushes. I think we're fine with not selecting the bushes for right now. We'll just keep grass in there. Add in another grade node. Go ahead and disable both these grade nodes and go back to viewing this grass element. Actually, I suppose we could probably view just the straight up merge of this for right now. Here's the thing. This grass is a lot more shaded than the grass that's over here. So we can't do a 1-for-1 comparison of the two, but we can definitely adjust the highlights, which will just be the white point. So let's go ahead and select the green that we have for our grass element there. And then let's go ahead and find a green element over here that we would like to match it to. So we'll set the gain value to that. I think that should work fine. So now let's go ahead and enable all of that. And that already is a lot closer. Let's go ahead and mix this back in a little bit. And then I like to also add in, let's just add another grade node. I think with this grass here, we might want to select just more of a yellowish tinge to it. And already you can see if we just disable all of this, where we're at, everything is already starting to line up a little bit better. Just add a little bit of contrast into our trees. Perfect. And again, we'll just set this to input, I think, or not, global's fine for right now. Just play this back and see what our sequence looks like. Okay. All right. So now that's all done. I want to add in some slight motion blur. I actually noticed that these cameras that they're filming on have really no motion blur. So if we just add in a tiny bit, I'm going to actually set the samples here to 10. We'll set the shutter speed here to like a 0.25. So it's really not going to be that much motion blur that we're adding to this thing. Maybe even less than that. Let's do a 0.1 here. So now if we go ahead and play this back, everything's going to have like this extra little bit of motion blur that we're really adding into that shot. I'm curious if we actually just want to test this. All right. So let's go ahead and set this to a 0.5 on the background samples here, because we do know that we did use 0.5 for the actual Blender renders. And I'm wondering if this will match up. My biggest concern was not to have the motion blur, but was the fact that the two didn't really line up. So if we take the, this is our foreground elements here that all have motion blur now applied to the grass elements. And then we go ahead and also add that same amount of motion blur to the background plate of everybody. Then everything should just line up, which it does. And now we're getting, because I think that motion blur is very important for the fighters flying overhead. Otherwise, we're losing just so much of the impact of that scene. Now, with these jets flying overhead, okay, there's some like paint issues that I think I want to fix. For instance, if we go to the edge of the shot here, I just want to point out I'm not exactly happy with the way this looks here. It feels too sharp. It feels unrealistic to me. So let's go ahead and try to fix that. I'm going to focus on this above here. Right after we do our shuffle node, we're going to want to do our paint out essentially of what that's going to look like. So we do need to track this and stabilize it. That way we can do all of our work inside of Nuke here. I think a simple, let's use a planar tracker. We're going to use this as our main kind of reference frame. Delete this. I'm sorry. We're not using the time offset here. We actually need to be using time offset because our frames that we imported are on frame 1. So let's go ahead and redo that. Planar tracker. Keep everything in the kind of that same world of like what frames we're actually utilizing. So we'll go back to frame 1093 here, add in our roto, which this is going to actually service us pretty well. We have these blue marks over here, and I'm not quite sure where those came from. We should have a decent track, and that should work for our paint out that we're trying to do here. So let's do stabilize. If we do a stabilization here, and then just plug that into our time offset. And then I'm going to do a corner pin relative, and we'll just plug that in at the bottom here. What is that going to do for us? If we go view our stabilized version of our shot here, hopefully, if our track was successful, should keep everything pretty flat here, which it does. This will allow us to do all of our paint out work just on this section of the image here while it's not moving. And then we'll reapply that under our relative corner pin here. This is going to replace everything after the fact. I want to mostly utilize and fix this right side of the wall. That's the thing that's bothering me the most. So let's go ahead and add in a paint node. And I want to kind of blur out this line a little bit. It's a little too harsh for me. So let's go to this last frame here, 1093, and fix that. First, by just using a blur node. Now, there are a couple ways. I mean, there's new stuff that we can definitely do as well. One thing I found very useful is just taking stuff over into Photoshop and doing your paint work over inside of Photoshop. Because now, I mean, hell, I mean, you can do the paint tools are better. But secondly, the other thing that's really awesome about using Photoshop is that they have the whole new generative fill method. So if you don't like some CG stuff, you can project, you could do all your CG work, then take it into Photoshop, fix it with a matte painting, and then project that back into your 3D scene. So we're going to try to like soften this edge up a little bit. I'm going to try to paint in some of this texture here over top of our metal plating. The only issue we're going to have, I think, is I'm sampling a lot of these colors from this side of the image, and as the camera's moving out, we're actually going to lose that. Maybe because we're not doing too much of a parallax, I might be able to get away with using some kind of like a frame hold on this. Try doing something crazy here. Let's create our own matte painting here. I'm going to just set this merge over here to a stencil, and then we can invert our roto that we have. Let's go ahead and just select this this edge that we're painting here. We don't need to have the whole wall that we're painting, and we don't actually need that paint node to have everything go all the way across. We'll set this over here. We'll pre-multiply it. And I'm going to take this and merge this back over top of our original footage. So now this is just basically a matte painting of that little section there. I might even blur this. Let's go ahead and just drag this upwards a little bit. So now if we go and view that, you'll notice that we just have this little sliver of a section there that we're basically going to be placing over top of our original photo. And we don't have to do any roto or anything of any elements in front of it because nobody's running in front of it. So that actually works really well. Some weird, like, what is, so I think our grass, we're just blowing out the grass too much when we're doing our adjustments up here. Here's what we could do instead. Let's keep that one, but not do this one. Also, it's very possible, yes, that's why. I happen to know why. Let's select the crypto mats from all the way up here. Yeah, it was because of this whole corner pin situation. I was like, I don't remember seeing that jankiness before. There we go. Works so much better. Sometimes with crypto mats, I've noticed if you do any reformatting before the crypto mats actually selects the stuff, I've noticed that if this was selected to here, right? So because it was selected to there, the corner pin was basically stabilizing it and then reapplying the stabilization or the move. And because of that, it was screwing up the crypto mat channel. I've noticed that the AOVs do get screwed up. I don't know if that's a bug or if that's just, I don't know. We're going to use a camera tracker inside of Nuke. We don't need that many tracker nodes or anything like that. We don't need any undistorting of the lens distortion. It's just atmosphere. Let's just track this real quick. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and hit the solve button there. Wow, that is already a good solve, but we're going to make it better. Delete your rejected, delete your unsolved. And yeah, let's go ahead and load in our scene. I'm not going to link outputs. I always find that linking outputs is so much slower. Fantastic. Now with our camera track, we're going to make sure that this is set to off. Let's add in a card just to see how this looks. Let's say we want to have our atmosphere here, which is going to be a nice foreground point. I'm going to just right click that and then add in a card. And that card is going to be added into your node graph. And if we connect that to our scene now, go out of our tab view, you'll notice a big black plane. If we add a checkerboard, we'll be able to see this a little bit better. It is our card. And we can place this card wherever we want inside of 3D space because now it is a 3D plane. And even better, what I like to do just to see exactly how well this is going to look is adding a merge node in below this scanline render and then removing that BG from the scanline render. And now it's going to be merging everything below it. Now, why do we want to do that? Well, it's because this is now our A of our merge, and this is our B, which will allow us to change the transparency of this really easily. So we're just going to go ahead and do that real quick, and then just play this back. See how well our card got placed into our scene? And what we're going to use is some amazing assets from our wonderful sponsor of today, Action VFX, which Action VFX, by the way, for all you guys that weren't here at the beginning of the video, has a 30% off discount for all of their credits packs for the rest of the year. Or I think it's for the next 2 days, but it's for the entirety of the year. They drop new assets every single month, so go grab some assets now. So let's go ahead and load that in. I actually have the website already open. Now this is pretty straightforward. We actually now have this guy in here, and I'm just going to tag him as sRGB or 709 or something like that. Probably just do output 709. And you'll notice that we now have this awesome fog in here. If we go ahead and just change our image from our card to that, we will see that over inside of our comp. We'll make sure that we're not losing it completely. But here we go. This is our dude. But he's got a black background, and there's a couple ways we could remove that. I found sometimes the easiest way is just using a merge node and then using the mask from your image there, and then just setting this to like red or something like that. And now if we go view this, you'll notice that the alpha channel is just this evaporation fog directly on the image. It is a little hard to see in here, and that's because this is our merge of where that stuff is placed. Let's go ahead and just drag our card upwards a little bit. So now our smoke is going to be on the ground here. Whoops, that just scaled it up. I don't really want that, but we mostly want this to be sitting on our ground. So now if we go look at that, you'll notice that everything feels a little bit more smoggy in our scene. We may also now want to do some grading. So let's go ahead and add in a grade node, and we can set this to whichever value we want. So if we go ahead and disable our merge, we can go ahead and change our gain of our white fog that we have to maybe like a musty dirt color. So let's go ahead and swap it to like a dirt brown that's already in our scene. And if we add that merge back in, you'll notice that now we have kind of like this smogginess inside of our scene. There you go. We already have a little bit of nice smoke in there. Maybe adjust our card placement a little bit. With our smoke, we already actually have our alpha being set by this merge node there. We know we're not seeing the right side of the smoke, but we are definitely seeing the left side of the smoke. So we need to fix that. So let's go ahead and just drag this card over here. And let's go ahead and add in another merge node. And we're going to add in a roto node here with, let's swap these inputs, the B being at the top. And we're going to just set this merge here to a stencil. Perfect. Now, what does that do for us? With our roto being pre-multiplied, anywhere we draw our new Bezier curve that we're going to add in, it's going to erase, okay? And because of that, we're able to create our own feathered edge that we weren't able to have before. So all we have to do now is just add in a blur node next that's connecting to this stencil that we have here. And all we have to do is then blur that up. I like to set this to like a value somewhere close to like 300, and it makes this now a nice fall off at the edge of your smoke. Now, we're not going to see that hard line that we have there. With and without it, let's go back a few frames to the opening of the shot. And if we remove that stencil, you'll notice that we have that hard line. Now we don't have that hard line. And we can do that for any of the assets that we have that we're going to add in. So now we have kind of like this big smoke bloom here. I might take this A input now. We have to merge this back. Whoops. Let's grab this whole section and just drag this over here. And I'm going to hide the input of this value here, but we'll also erase this lens distortion here. We're going to drag this merge node over and just add in a point down here so that way that can connect a little bit easier. And then the B input is now just going to be our CG output of our shot. That might be fine for this layer of smoke that we're adding in, but we might want to go a little bit crazier with it. All right. So let's look at our smoke that we have, which is this guy here. We can add in an O-flow node, and we might want to pre-render this because O-flow can make comps pretty dang heavy. We'll set this to input here and just see exactly what it's doing. Now this is doing output speed of 0.5. We're going to want to let's set it to like 5. Just play that back. Now you can see that the smoke is moving quite a bit faster. Could be a little bit closer to what we want. So let's go ahead and just use a right node. This way we're just pre-rendering stuff. We don't need to keep everything inside of the comp. Otherwise it makes your comp very, very heavy. We'll save these out as EXRs. They could be EXR linear files. To create directory, save this, and then let's render that. Great, now that that's rendered, let's go ahead and load in these EXR files here. We're going to need to set the A to this as well as the mask, but once that happens, now we just have this EXR sequence. I might change the offset inside of this to be something like 900. Technically, it should be 999. That way it starts at frame 1000. And then, yeah, let's go ahead and see what this looks like now with faster fog. Yeah, that's pretty nice. I love the speed of it. I just think that it's a little heavy. I'm going to adjust the opacity of this over inside of before it hits the card. Because right now I only have one smoke asset in here, but I want to have a bunch of smoke assets. And I don't want to overall adjust it. You can overall adjust it by using this merge node here, but as I said, I want to have more than one card in here, and I want some of them to have higher opacity or less opacity to them. So with that being said, I think we could just change that through this node here. Might just change the mix of this original merge. That's looking about right to me. I'm just eyeballing that. Let's go and save that. Let's go ahead and find some more assets. I'm going to drag both these over here. We'll just tag them both as our output 709. Cool. And then now we're going to need cards to have these placed in here. I think when the jet's flying overhead right here, we're going to want kind of around this section to be where the dust is getting kicked up. So we'll go view kind of what's going on here. And if we select this, let's find, is there anything that pops up? No, I think this is the closest. We'll create a card around this section. And let's see, we'll go into 3D space here. I want to place this card onto our scene. And let's see, grabbing this guy, we'll just place him further back and over. Fantastic. So with this guy, if we place the asset onto it, just want to kind of line this up a little bit. I'm going to add in a time offset, even though we are going to do a speed ramp and then pre-render all this stuff out anyways later. I just kind of want to mostly line up the location of this. So let's just really quickly do it this way. Not ideal, but we just need to line this up. Probably do a transform and then flop this as well. Let's see. Place this out in 3D space here. Where's my card? There it is. I think I'm kind of happy with the location that is being placed in. It might need to be a little bit higher to interact with the ground. Did I take it too far back? Might want to push this down a little bit. So now when the ship flies overhead, we kind of want that wind to kick up a bunch of the dust that's on the ground there. So with this flopped image that we have, let's use a O-flow on it and set this to a value of 2. Just see what that looks like. I'm kind of fine with that. That looks pretty close to the initial speed that we're going to want. Maybe a little faster. Let's set that to 4. We'll do twice as fast and see what that looks like. So use this O-flow here, and let's go ahead and render that out. So we'll go ahead and select our pre-render folder, dust 1. Go ahead and just render that out. We're not trying to render out any alpha channel or anything like that, so don't worry about any of that. We'll go ahead and load that dust in now. Using the same time offset as before, it's probably not necessarily a bad idea. Let's find roughly where this flight of the Phoenix happens. Let's just play this back here. This will be the first one, so frame 29, I think it should be roughly starting. Should have done that here, where the time offset's actually happening. So frame, I would say 40/41. I think we're going to want to have this to kind of come in. So a little more time, because the dust isn't going to fly as fast as the jet, but it's going to be kind of like kicked up. That's pretty sweet. I like that. That's actually good timing. Let's go in and add in this next one. So we're just going to use the exact same node setup that we used before. So just copy paste that. Let's make sure, let's use input here. Let's make sure, yep, it's coming the same direction. I like that it's lower. Let's change the O flow here to be a little bit faster. I might do a 6. Let's do a 6. Let's see how fast that is. Yes. Just because it's more squished, I feel like it should be a little bit quicker. And then we'll set this output right node to dust 2 for both the folder as well as the file name. Now that's finished rendering. Let's go and load in the dust number 2, which is actually this guy over here. Let's go and load him in. And I want to kind of copy this card. We'll just copy him for right now. And then we'll copy paste this whole setup that we have here, although we're going to have to change the time offset to be slightly different. Also, kind of the general placement of this card. So let's see, if we go into 3D space here, we actually have all of our assets lined up. We can just grab this guy. I want to make him a little more rotated slightly. Let's do that. And then let's make it a little closer to camera. Now with our time offset that we have, let's go check out our timing again. So we have jet number 1, jet number 2. So that's happening around 1050. Again, if we go back over here, honestly, that's already quite lined up. So let's just see how that looks. Everything in playback. So that's going to kick up a little bit of dust, and then boom, that guy comes in, really kicks it. I'll say let's grade these to look a little bit better or a little closer to the rest of our dust that we're having here. I think that's going to be important. So let's do, we have this grade adjustment node here, and that's basically setting it to this brown value that we have. And we need to do that to all of our dust, okay? Add in a saturation node, desat these guys. Now they're gray smoke. Perfect. Copy paste. Now these are going to match your gray smoke elements that we have. Okay, that's these guys. Now that we have that in there, I think the actual ships flying overhead would be nice to have a slight bit of effect, like where we're seeing some warbling in the background here. The easiest method, I think, is going to be just creating a roto node. So let's just add in a roto node, and let's do all of this before our actual fighter jet gets added. Oh, no, it has to be after, because it's not just the fighter jet. It has to be this background. Whoops, what am I doing here? Okay, great. Now we have our roto node. Let's add in kind of like a roto of behind it. I might even delete that, and let's just feather the hell out of this. I'm just going to feather the hell out of the outside of this guy. Also blur this to Kingdom Come. And we're going to add in a blur node. And all this is going to do is just have a slight bit of a flang to it. And I almost don't want to use this. Let's use that as our initial. There we go. That's going to create the actual alpha channel that we are so desiring. And then this is going to kind of blur out everything and create kind of like this feathered edge here, which I think is pretty sweet. The only thing we don't want for sure is to blur the actual jet streaks here, because I think that is going to take away from that effect. So if we go ahead and add in a crypto matte, and actually this crypto matte needs to come from that point there. I might even just add another point in like so and just hide the input of it. Cool. Now with this crypto matte, let's go ahead and view it real quick. You'll notice that, whoops, we can actually select our ship here. We're going to want to make sure to select our ship. Let's select our second ship as well, so that way we have a crypto matte of both ships. Perfect. And from our roto blur that we're doing here, we're actually just going to use the mask input of this, and actually we can actually just, this is a lot easier, just use the stencil, whoops, not soft light, but stencil of the merge here. And you'll notice now that because we did that, we're actually not going to be erasing the streaks that we had. If we just have this here, that actually fixes our problem. So now we just need to make sure that we animate this to move with our fighter jet. And that's pretty clear cut, just following the back edge of that. And instead of using a blur, we can always try using a directional blur as well. And let's change this blur length here. Change the angle as well, just to match our... Why is my blur angle not changing? Maybe not. Let's just stick with blur. I never know how the directional blur thing works with this. And then I'm also going to take this and maybe not desat it, but I'm thinking that if we lift it a little bit by changing the contrast, make it slightly less contrasty, you're going to get kind of more of that soft kind of jet, I don't know, atmospheric feel to it. Okay, let's go ahead, and after this, we're going to go ahead and add in some grain. I like to use Furnace Core's Regrain node, especially for stuff that I don't actually have the initial grain on. They shoot a lot of their or stock footage for action VFX with like quite little grain, and I like grain. So, I mean, not even that much. Like, I'm only adding in this much. You guys might not even be able to see it on the live stream. It's really not that much grain, but it just helps everything kind of like sit inside of the environment a little bit better. Let's go ahead and then add in a light wrap. This has helped to blend the sky into our CG environment a little bit better. I mean, we already did a pretty good job, but I want to just add in that little extra chef's kiss of blending stuff together. So we're just going to add in this light wrap, change the intensity here, and you'll notice right off the bat, this is really what we're going for. This part here. Change the diffuse a little bit. And I don't know why we're getting that as well. This should just be, like, it shouldn't be focused on, is it because of the motion blur? You know what? We'll just do that. I don't care. Let's use a crop. Okay, that actually works. So we're just adding kind of like this overall kind of like atmospheric glow there to everything. I'm going to just change the intensity value to be a little bit less. And then after our regrain, actually before our regrain, just use again, we undistorted everything from before. I'm just going to use my own redistortion node here. And we're going to eyeball it to what it originally was. Not even that much, just a little bit. Overall, on our footage here, I kind of want to glow everything. So there's like a minor amount of glowing that I think really helps your CG stuff, because right now our stuff is pretty crystal clear with how everything looks. So let's go ahead and add in a glow. And then we're going to make some adjustments here. First of all, let's change the tolerance here to be something really small. And we'll change the brightness value as well to be like half of this. Change the saturation. We're not trying to saturate this, so again, try to desat that. And then we'll just change this size to be, again, probably like a 20 or something like that. We're not going to want a lot of this, though. So let's do effect only, and then we're going to merge this back over top of our original CG material that we have. And by doing this, it'll allow us to use a screen multiplier and then have the adjustment of this be something like 0.4. So a lot smaller. But what this is doing is allowing us to add in like this extra little atmospheric glow. I don't even think we need that much. We'll probably just do a little bit. 0.2 or even like a 0.7. That works pretty well. And that's just kind of like adding in overall small atmospheric glow. I'm going to do a couple more of these. So the next one, let's just target the larger areas of the glow. Probably set this to a larger tolerance value of like 0.5. And then we'll set the brightness of this to be a little bit brighter than the other one. And we'll also set the saturation to the same value. But the size of this is going to be a lot smaller. And again, if we do effect only, we can kind of see exactly what it's doing here. It's not doing that much for our glow. We'll just merge that back over top with a screen multiplier on top of our original shot. And again, this will allow us to control how much of this that we're really trying to do. This is the small areas of the glow that will help sell that kind of like realism on our CG. And then again, we'll probably just take this whole thing and we'll just blur it by like 600 and then merge that back over top of everything. So merge it. Again, just do another screen multiplier. And we're just going to make this super small. This is your overall atmosphere adjustment that we're doing here. Just from the nature of this, let's grab this whole glow that we're doing here. And we're going to do this after the merge. Perfect. Do a little less blur on this. That way it's not so just, it was a little too blurred. And, but it's got to be there, but not too, it's got to be more subtle. Okay. And the only other thing I was noticing was that I did remove this light wrap that we have here. I just don't think that works for us. And then the dust waves that we have going on, let's make these not as saturated. What does it look like if we just disabled this completely. Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm thinking it's just got to be a little less. So if we desat it half, maybe not even quite half, let's do 0.75 or something like that. So basically what I'm doing is I just added a, I just added a saturation node in and set those to 0.75 after these dust waves here. Let's add a grade node in, do another crypto mat here. And if we view this, let's just select these guys. These are our guys running in our CG shot. Do we want them brighter? Do we want them darker? What's going on here? Did I not select these guys? I have them right there. This needs to be reformatted, I think. That's why. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, we're just gonna darken these guys a little bit. Is that okay? Should we darken them or lighten them? I don't know what we should do here. I think darkening them is not the answer. I would think lightening them is. Making them a little bit brighter. What if we edge blurred this a little bit? That way we're eating into it, so that way it's not lifting the edges as much. You can kind of tell what we're doing here by the alpha channel. We're just kind of like blurring that edge. It's more of like a colorist thing. Usually in VFX, you want to have like really sharp edges, but okay. Another thing I want to do real quick while I'm thinking about it is let's add a constant in with the value set to 1. And then we're going to add in a shuffle node and setting the A to this constant. I don't know if there's a better way to do this, but this is the way I've been doing it, is just feeding in the A, like one of the channels into the alpha here, so that now that's setting everything like that. Otherwise, what happens is that using your merge node, you're actually keeping the alpha channel from your A input there, and then that's being fed down the line. That can actually be very detrimental if you send it to a colorist, because they'll be viewing it with the incorrect alpha channels. Well, there you go. I think that's the end of this tutorial series on creating a set extension with these different elements. You can grab these 3D elements, by the way. This is the Abrams tank from Action VFX, and then these jets are the fighter jets from Action VFX as well. Thank you guys so much for watching this stream, you know, and making sure this happens. Again, a huge special thanks to the Patreon members that are part of our Patreon already that make these streams happen. I hope to see you guys again next week. If you guys have any suggestions of what you would like to see, go ahead and leave that in the comments below. I always look forward to seeing your guys' comments and what you guys are asking for. So make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the like button below, so that way you guys don't miss our future streams and all the stuff we're doing. But thank you guys again. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.